Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
We love Great Britain. We love its history, its culture and its tradition, and that's why we're so proud to be part of GB News.
You look genuinely emotional. Oh, come here.
GB News does pay attention to those who are ignored by the mainstream media. The majority of this country whose forefathers fought and died to maintain liberty, to fight for freedom of speech.
The rule of law, the rights of property and democracy. This is the heritage that our country should be so proud of.
Which of course includes our Christian heritage. There's been a huge resurgence in the number of people going to church. Perhaps they're not finding what they're looking for, and they're looking for something a bit deeper, a bit more truthful, a bit more akin to Britain's Christian heritage.
That's right, get ready, because the most exciting night in general election history starts now!
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Tuesday, the 6th of January. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Akua.
We are in a world which is going to have more threats for a long time to come, and we need to rise up to that and defend against that as well.
The Prime Minister will join world leaders in Paris this afternoon for crucial Ukraine talks as the war approaches 4 years. But President Donald Trump's dramatic action in Venezuela is already looming over the meeting.
And the American president is doubling down on his bid for Greenland, brushing aside warnings it could tear NATO apart, while European leaders, including our Prime Minister and the French President Emmanuel Macron, respond firmly, stressing sovereignty, borders and NATO unity.
Drivers over the age of 70 will be forced to take eye tests every 3 years under new plans to improve road safety rather than self-referring. Is that a good idea?
And the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, blocks support for pubs, even as Sir Keir Starmer admits many will suffer under his business rate changes.
Police chiefs are under scrutiny after it's alleged that anti-Semitic preachers at mosques were consulted on the Maccabi Tel Aviv fan ban.
And of course, snow grips the UK, causing major travel disruption and school closures. Find out if your area will be affected.
Hundreds of schools are closed across the north of Scotland. Roads are closed and trains have been cancelled as 2 amber alert warnings grip the north of Scotland, while the rest of the UK is covered by yellow warnings. We'll have all the snowy latest this hour.
God bless Tony Maguire, our freezing weather correspondent.
Oh, no.
Did you see when he dipped in? I think it was New Year's Day down in Thorn. That got, I think it got 7 million views on TikTok. Yeah.
I was thinking about Chico. Do you remember Chico from the X Factor when he jumped into a pool with a live mic on? And I was thinking, I hope his mic isn't live or something odd's going to happen. Do you remember that was it X Factor or Pop Idol or whatever it's called?
Well, I was presenting when Tony did his deep dive into the river, and the microphone was very strategically kind of placed above his head like that. Yeah, he was going to save that microphone at all costs, so he did very well there. Yeah.
Although I noticed he was wearing Apple AirPods rather than our normal, more fancy sort of, well, we call them IFBs, don't we? I have no idea what IFB stands for, but our earpieces.
I don't understand.
I don't know what it
Well,
stands
as a man
for.
with the right kit, with the right job,
Yeah.
he knew what he was doing on it. And Joe, we should send him next Greenland. That's where he's
We
Get him to somewhere
Which is a ridiculous name for it, because Greenland, I mean, there's no green there, it's entirely ice.
I know, that is the thing, but it is interesting. Donald Trump, it's not the first time he's tried to grab Greenland, and America have often, they've offered to buy it many years ago, but of course Greenland didn't want to do that. And I think actually that is Donald Trump's plan. I think he actually wants to buy Greenland. I don't think he specifically wants to take it.
Well, I think this is one of the interesting things, because there is some tension in Greenland. There's a local independence movement who don't want to be controlled by Denmark, and there's Denmark saying, well, Greenland's ours and has been for hundreds of years. There's a bit of a tension here when it comes to international affairs, isn't there, Charlie?
Yes, and there's going to be a bit of an additional tension here, because if the US does want Greenland, it might have to first consult with Britain, because Denmark's last minister for the autonomous territory wrote a book on the history and said that Britain may actually have the first rights of refusal based on diplomatic talks from 1917. So before Donald Trump starts marching over to Greenland, he might first have to come to England and go to London.
He just needs to talk tariffs, and then Keir Starmer will sit back on the fence again.
Roll over.
Well, let's not forget that it's a kingdom of Denmark, so it's King Frederick X who reigns over Greenland, not the Prime Minister of Denmark, and of course it will be him that needs to be consulted. Maybe he should go on a royal charm offensive to the United States, like King Charles is going to try later on.
Do you know what I've noticed?
It worked for Trump before, doesn't it?
Some of us are saying Greenland, some of us are saying Greenland. It's curious how these terms can shift. Do you call it Disneyland Paris, or England, perhaps England?
Doggerland?
Doggerland.
But it's England.
England and Disneyland and Greenland.
England. It's England.
I think
is it? If it's more familiar, is it Lund?
Yeah, we become. What's Lunding?
Yeah, I think we've on that bombshell. Send us your thoughts, your comments. gbnews.com/your say, or you can scan the QR code on the side of the screen. But first, your latest news headlines with Sophia Hill.
Very good afternoon. It's 5 minutes past midday. These are your latest headlines. Keir Starmer is expected to meet with allies today after US forces captured Venezuela's president in a dramatic operation over the weekend. The Prime Minister will join international leaders in Paris for a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. Their primary focus is the future of Ukraine and keeping up momentum for the US-backed Ukraine peace deal. However, there is now growing concern over the legality of and global fallout of America's actions after President Trump captured former Venezuelan President Maduro and his wife. Downing Street says that Britain will shed no tears over the end of Maduro's rule, but insists that international law still matters. So Keir is likely to speak to Mr Trump and raise the raid on Venezuela after the meeting. Shadow Defence Secretary James Cartledge expressed his doubts over the outcome of today's meeting to GB News earlier on.
I worry that Putin, whatever happens today in Paris, whatever discussions take place among the coalition of the willing, is he serious about peace? Which is why, for me, without wishing to be repetitive, I think Britain within this, whatever happens today with its partners, has got to really up its game on rearmament, because I actually think even if we get a lasting peace, and I desperately want to see that, it's been a brutal war, nevertheless, we mustn't kid ourselves that ends the threat that we face. We are in a world which is going to have more threats for a long time to come, and we need to rise up to that.
Meanwhile, only Greenland and Denmark can decide on their future, European leaders have said in a joint statement this afternoon. France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain and the UK have said that Arctic security remains a key priority for Europe and it is critical for international and transatlantic security. It comes as President Donald Trump has doubled down on his territorial ambitions for Greenland, despite warnings that his plans for the Danish territory could destroy NATO. A press conference in Crans-Montana has revealed that no safety checks were carried out for 5 years at a bar where a fire killed 40 people in Switzerland. Since the devastating event on New Year's Eve, all sparkling candles have been banned inside venues. Speaking at the press conference, the Crans-Montana mayor said that their security considered the soundproof foam used in the ceiling of the bar acceptable at the time. It's also been revealed that there were 2 available exits from the bar, both of which caught fire that night. Now, back in the UK, health experts have welcomed plans for a new NHS online hospital targeting conditions like menopause and prostate problems. They say that digital access to specialist support could help people stay healthier, remain in work and boost productivity. Campaigners argue it could be a game changer for working women and for others managing long-term health conditions. Health Secretary Wes Streeting told GB News that he's certain it will speed things up in the NHS.
Know that waiting lists for particular specialties can be worse in some parts of the country than others. So if you can get access to a specialist faster online, then you might be able to do face-to-face. That can speed up access to the tests and scans or the treatment or the prescriptions that you might require depending on your condition. And the great thing about this is that for anyone watching who's thinking, well, that is not what I want, I'm not going to see someone online, what on earth is he talking about? Well, the good news is this is entirely through patient choice.
Now, temperatures plummeted to as low as minus 12.5 degrees in the UK overnight. That's as more snow has brought a second day of school closures and travel disruption. Northern Scotland is braced for heavy snow, with amber warnings in force, with up to 15 centimetres of snow possible. Meanwhile, further south, yellow snow and ice warnings stretch into central and southern England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Forecasters are warning that it's not over yet, as the week ahead could bring further disruption nationwide. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
Good afternoon, Britain. The Prime Minister is heading to Paris to meet world leaders for talks between the so-called coalition of the willing.
Well, of course, the focus is on Ukraine, but other things will no doubt dominate too. Shall we cross to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who's there at the Elysee Palace for us? Of course, the statement has been issued as well, all on Greenland. But let's get to Chopper now, because, Christopher Hope, this is a significant moment for the Prime Minister.
It really is. It's very much a snowbound Paris. The Prime Minister is on his way now from having that morning cabinet meeting. Inside the Elysee Palace behind me, President Zelensky has arrived from Ukraine. He's having an early lunch with President Macron. Later we'll see 27 European leaders of the so-called coalition of the willing arriving here, and then a press conference later around 5:45 UK time. We are expecting to hear later from a statement, a draft one already released from the coalition of the willing. They say they're willing to commit to a system of political and legally binding guarantees if a ceasefire with Russia can be agreed. That will include a multinational force for Ukraine to support the rebuilding of Ukraine's armed forces and support deterrence, they say. The coalition has also decided to establish a US-Ukraine coalition coordination cell here in Paris. This is because there have been loads of military planning since last March, alongside the political conversation between Putin, Zelensky and Trump. We know all about that. So there is a real attempt here to get towards a peace deal. I've heard from senior UK government sources, they do agree they are 90% there towards a peace deal, the final 10% being the hardest. What territory is conceded, what territory stays in a neutral zone which neither Russia nor Ukraine have control over, and what are the extent of those American security guarantees. So important. Also, a side issue but really important for NATO is Greenland. There's also been statements released already in support of Greenland. We heard yesterday Keir Starmer told GB News that Greenland sovereignty is sacrosanct and it could become a NATO issue if it could threaten NATO. Certainly we've been told that if the US was to launch some form of assault or invasion of Greenland. We're here today. There's a 30% chance of that happening according to UK government sources.
Now, of course, we do know that the entire process to try and deliver some sort of peace with Ukraine has hit so many bumps in the road over the course of the last 12 months or so. It seems that the United States wants to play a sort of arbitratory role here. And yet, is there any idea that something could come out of today that would look like it might be acceptable to the guy that started this war in the first place, Vladimir Putin?
Well, that much we don't know. We know that the US's Steve Witkoff is here, Jared Kushner, of course, the president's son-in-law. The big players here who can speak for the US President Donald Trump are here. We don't know what's acceptable to Putin. Of course, the seizing of the leader of Venezuela, Maduro, and his wife over the weekend throw a further complication in it. How can it be that the coalition, the willing, can lecture President Trump about what he's done in Ukraine, given the way that Donald Trump has roughshod over sovereignty in Venezuela? Very difficult there, that conversation, but it's right here today in Paris. It's very snowy here. There's a whiteout on the way down Eurostar. Let's see if they can find a way to defrost what has been a difficult peace process so far.
All right, thank you very much, Christopher Hope. Really good to talk to you. That's Christopher Hope there. He's live talking about the meeting, the Coalition of the Willing.
Absolutely. But with us for more, of course, is our national reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, just first on Greenland, or indeed Greenland. What exactly is actually real and not? This all seems to have stemmed from a tweet of the wife of a senior White House official.
Yes, that was Katie Miller, the wife of Stephen Miller, who is a very senior top aide to Donald Trump, really. She posted a photo of Greenland in the US flag, covering over it with the caption "soon," adding to a lot of conversation we've heard recently from US officials about them potentially taking over and annexing the Danish territory. But Stephen himself, the husband of, he spoke last night saying that nobody is going to fight the United States military over the future of Greenland. So a bit of fighting talk now. It's stepping a bit closer to a very concerning reality, even after the Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, said yesterday that really that was no way to speak about an ally, especially an ally in Denmark, a pretty powerful military nation, despite its small size, that has followed the United States into plenty of conflicts in the Middle East and beyond. Many families in Copenhagen will be sitting there thinking, and in other territories in Denmark thinking, well, actually, you know, my son and daughter fought for a US-led coalition. Why are you now threatening to take away our territory? And when you poll Greenlanders, they say over 85% of them say they do not want to become part of the United States, despite its great wealth. But the conversation about the future of Greenland obviously creating a lot of political turmoil in Britain. We heard a bit from our political editor, Christopher Hope, about that. On Venezuela, Sir Keir Starmer is more than just sitting on the fence. He's in a very precarious position, struggling to say much about it. He doesn't want to upset his American allies, but also doesn't want to add to the fury on his backbenches about the raid in Caracas. A lot of members of the Labour left have described it as an imperialist action, very agitated by it. But I think he's going to be put in an even more difficult position by what the US does next, because there's an oil tanker called the Bella 1, now known as the Miranera. It tried to get into Venezuela last month on its way from Iran, but it was turned away by that blockade, which has been in place for a couple of months now, and it started heading towards the North Atlantic. It's now a few hundred miles off the west of the United Kingdom, and it could soon be seized and boarded by US Special Forces. We've seen a surge in activity from the US military heading into RAF's Fairford and Mildenhall in Gloucestershire and Suffolk, respectively. And we have seen them seize 2 tankers in the last year. We have some footage we can play you of the last time the US military boarded one of these tankers. Footage we can play out for you now, I hope, of them conducting those activities. That's on your screen now. We could see this happening from US forces launched from the United Kingdom very shortly. We have seen at least one of the helicopters that was used in this Caracas raid on Saturday morning in the UK. It's a MH-47G. It's a variant of the Chinook Special Forces variant, the same aircraft that was used to abduct Nicolas Maduro from his bedroom when those Delta Force operators descended at very low flying altitude over there. We have seen P-8 US Navy maritime patrol aircraft conducting patrols in the Atlantic. Almost certainly conducting reconnaissance on this sanctioned oil tanker, which we believe is heading towards Russia. We've also seen Ospreys, CV-22Bs, Special Forces variants of that aircraft, conducting low-flying practice between Fairford and Mildenhall. We have also heard from US intelligence officials yesterday speaking to US media, confirming some of our predictive assessment that the US is now seeking to repeat the scenes on your screen off the coast of Britain.
And Charlie, just to reiterate, this would be a problem for Keir Starmer. When it comes to Venezuela, he can say it's a long way away, it's not in sort of the British sphere of influence, if we're returning to sphere of influence talking, but this would be American Special Forces going from RAF bases in Britain to seize an oil tanker that is not American. I mean, this has a direct consequence for our Prime Minister. What might he say?
Well, we've reached out to the Ministry of Defence to ask if and when they might comment on this operation, to what extent the UK is aware of it or involved. The Shadow Defence Minister, for his part, James Cartledge, he wasn't aware of it this morning. But this could be more than just your standard seizing and boarding operation. We've seen an AC-130J gunship, 2 of them arriving into Britain, because there's also been some reporting coming out of the United States overnight that the US intelligence community fears that many of these tankers, and about 16 of them are now fleeing from Venezuela, could have anti-air defence assets on them, forgive me, along with some armed members of the Venezuelan military or militias on board. This could be quite the scrap, launching from UK air bases. So Keir Starmer would then be very much drawn into this directly.
It'll be fascinating to watch what happens. Charlie Peters, thank you very much. Right, well, in our poll today, we're asking, should drivers over 70 be forced to have eye tests? Now, vote now in your You Decide poll. So far, 55% of you have said yes, 45% of you have said no.
That is the closest You Decide poll I have ever seen on this channel.
Interesting.
So, I mean, goodness, I think there are some pretty strong opinions on both sides of this. So, yeah, if you do want to get involved...
I don't see what the problem is there. I really don't. I think if you get to a certain age and you're going to be driving a vehicle which could almost be used as a weapon, not on purpose, that it's a big old thing, a car, it can kill people. So just to make sure you're still fit and able to drive one, I see no problem with that.
Although they do say that 70 is the new 60. You know, are people more able in their older age now than they were in decades past?
Maybe.
Perhaps?
I mean, they've got laser eye treatment and all sorts of things, but the question is, do you think that people should have those eye tests? I think they should. I think they should be tested, even though driving tests. I mean, how many times did it take you to pass yours?
Once. I passed it first time.
Passed, you?
First time. It's just I didn't do it until last year, but I did pass first time with only 2 minors, both for going slightly too quickly.
Usually first-time drivers are the worst. I think you'll be getting a ticket soon for something.
Oh, I don't think so. I drove all over the place over the Christmas period, and I so far haven't had a little letter through my what do you call it? Letterbox.
Yes, touch
through my letterbox to say that I've broken some sort of speed limit or otherwise. I don't think I have.
Well, we'll see. I'm looking forward to that. But first, let's time your Great British Giveaway. 2026 could be on us. An incredible £85,000 to be won. Here are the details.
It's a brand new year and we're giving you the chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. £85,000 in tax-free cash to make your new year the best yet. And we've come to the Aurora Collection Resort here in Lapland to celebrate. Imagine what the coming year could look like for you with a whopping £85,000 in the bank. You can have the complete Lapland experience all in one place by visiting the Northern Lights Village, or just safe in the knowledge that this year is on us. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours.
For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. The winner may be contacted live on GB News, week commencing the 9th of February 2026. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, good luck indeed. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come.
Yes, on today's show, a new poll shows that nearly 1 in 5 Gen Zs...
Gen Zs?
No, Gen Zs. Gen Zs.
Good Afternoon Britain, not Good Afternoon America.
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Would back a strong leader without elections. So basically, I like the idea of a dictator. So we're asking young people, do they still believe in democracy? But after the break.
Yes, police under fire after claims evidence was drawn up to justify banning Israeli fans from a football match.
Yes, all of that and much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, pub bosses say they face financial ruin after Rachel Reeves' stealth tax raid in the budget as pint prices are ramped up, opening hours are cut and staff are laid off in desperate attempts to keep running.
So this morning we're asking, would you pay more for your pint to save local pubs?
Well, joining us now is pub owner Mark Bridgen and Communications Officer for the IEA, Reem Ibrahim. Really good to see you both this morning. Mark, let's start with you. We've spoken to you a lot about your lovely pub. Would you want people to pay more for a pint in order to save your business?
Well, it's looking like the only option. Yeah, with the increased taxes on every level and now the stress around rates increase and valuation agency, I don't know anyone that is making any money, so it feels like the only thing to do is to raise your prices. The irony is that actually at the moment many of us are actually putting down our prices to try and get people through the doors. You know, in a desperate bid to stay alive, we're having to, try and offer even more value.
Do you think the government is just tone deaf to the plight of our landlords of pubs and restaurants across the country?
They absolutely are. I mean, over 21,000 pubs have closed since 1980. That's half of that in the last 2 decades alone. So I really do think that the government have tax regulated, restricted pubs to the oblivion. But this is where I disagree with Mark. I don't think it's up to businesses themselves to say, you know what, we're going to remove our profit margins even further. We know that the hikes in national insurance contributions and increase in the minimum wage have a huge impact on small businesses.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dewbs and Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. MPs are set to challenge West Midlands police after Aston Villa barred Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from entering the stadium.
Well, the match sparked mass protests ahead of the match, and the force had been under increased pressure to explain why officers decided to do so.
Well, joining us now from Aston Villa is GB News' national reporter Jack Carson. So, Jack Carson, tell us a bit about, because some people may not know what happened, so if you could explain what happened and where we go from there.
Yeah, so this will be it will not be the first time that the West Midlands Police have been questioned by MPs over their decision to ban Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from coming to the Europa League game against Aston Villa back in November. They made that decision a few weeks before that game in October, essentially saying that previous situations that had happened in Amsterdam when they'd played Ajax, which did involve violence on the streets, meant that for them it was not safe to guarantee the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from coming to Aston Villa. But since that decision was made, and mass scrutiny from politicians of all parties, from the Prime Minister himself, who worried around the concerns around anti-Semitism on that decision, more evidence has come to light, most notably in the last few days, in leaked minutes from the Safety Advisory Group. They are the group, essentially, which has to decide on every football match, decides here in the city whether they are safe to go ahead, what precautions might have to take place. But leaked minutes from the advisory group meeting back in October, before that decision was made public, said that the police based their initial support for a ban on what one officer described as their professional judgment, and also in the absence of intelligence. And the force only produced, these leaked minutes say, significant and new intelligence about the Maccabi fan base after a Birmingham Council staff member worried and confined that questions could well be asked around whether this could preempt criticism of claims of anti-Jewish sentiment. So from then on, the West Midlands police changed their approach and focused overwhelmingly on that disorder that broke out in Amsterdam. But since they then quoted their sources and quoted their evidence from things that had happened in Amsterdam itself, Dutch police and higher Dutch police authorities have come out contradicting the evidence that West Midlands police say that they were using in their decision to ban the Maccabi Tel Aviv's fans. Most notably, one of them being that 5,000 police officers had to be deployed onto the streets. Dutch police say it was closer to 1,200, and some of the events that happened, the Dutch police said that they had no recollection of. So, as I was saying, this will not be the first time that West Midlands Police and Craig Guilford will be questioned by these MPs over their decision making, and this new evidence is going to cause more questions. But also today, facing MPs will be the Birmingham City Council leader, John Cotton. He'll have to face questions over the Safety Advisory Group, which is a Birmingham City Council group especially around the governance. We are hearing that the council has employed lawyers to come up with a new way of how those safety advisory groups will be governed. But there's a lot of controversy around this decision still, and a lot of questions still to be answered, particularly around exactly how independent that safety advisory group was, given that there were councillors on that safety advisory group who, when the match was announced, had come out publicly saying that they were going to boycott the match in support of the situation happening in Gaza and Palestine. So lots of questions to be asked, and they'll have to face those from MPs today.
Certainly serious times for those making decisions, but I suppose one of the big questions is, what do the local community feel about this in Manchester? Of course, a lot of concern that there could have been disruption. There had been disruption at other football matches around the world, but is this ethno-religious tension, or was this genuine concern for the safety of people in the local area?
Well, we saw, didn't we, widespread backlash for Maccabi Tel Aviv coming from Ayub Khan, the local MP here, as a part of the Perry Bar constituency. He came out saying that this was about previous violence that had involved the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans. But then once they were banned, it suddenly became an issue rather of Israel's part of UEFA. That was certainly some of the protests that took place on the night of the game. Even though there were no away fans here, there were protests on the night of the game focusing a lot around whether Israel should be part of UEFA. Certainly not concerned, really, those protests around the previous incidents that may well have been involved with the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans. But here in the local community, there was certainly some feeling, worry around it. But one of the other things that they'll be questioned on today is Muslim groups in the area, of course, and what conversations have been had with certain communities and certain community leaders around here, but also as well Jewish community leaders. What had local Jewish people said? What was the advice? What was the evidence? What were the conversations that they were having? As of course, we saw counter protests here as well on the night of that game. It took a lot of police to protest this game. And just before, I will just say what the West Midlands Police have told us. They said that a huge amount of planning went into the operation with the aim of preventing crime and disorder and disruption to the game. They say our work to listen to the concerns of Birmingham will continue, and they say they remain proud to serve such a diverse region.
All right, Jack Carson, thank you very much. Sounds to me like the information that was given sounds a bit false, and I'm wondering whether there were other motives at play, which is why they used that information to ban the fans. It just doesn't sound right to me. Something seems a bit odd there.
Just 2 hours to wait until that session with the MPs gets underway. We'll hear what they have to say.
I just want to say that the lovely Ian sent me a message about eye tests. He said, great show as always. He said, when I lived in Spain, everyone had to take a competence test on computer to test reaction time and eye test with medical questionnaires every time you renewed your licence, as not just for elderly people, not just elderly people are poor drivers. I'm a great fan of this system as it makes sure everyone driving is fit to drive. All the best for 26, he says. Yeah, thank you.
I wonder how often you'd have to renew your licence. Of course.
Yeah, we'll see. I think perhaps we need to do that here, maybe every 5 years or something like that.
Every 5 years? I'm not doing another driving test.
It's for your eyes.
No.
It's a sort of competence test.
My eyes are fine.
Well, yes.
Oh, I don't think this.
Everyone, especially young people,
we're doing far too many tests.
I think young people and new drivers, absolutely, they're the worst.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. There's plenty more still to come on the programme after your very latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon. These are the latest headlines just after 12:30. Sir Keir Starmer is expected to meet with allies today to discuss the future of Ukraine, but concerns are now over the legality and global fallout of America's actions after President Trump's capture of former President Nicolas Maduro. A press conference in Crans, Montana has revealed that no safety checks were carried out for 5 years at the bar where a fire killed 40 people in Switzerland. Health experts have welcomed plans for a new NHS online hospital targeting conditions like menopause and prostate problems, saying it could help people stay healthier and boost productivity. Mandatory eye tests for drivers over 70 are on the table under new government road safety plans aimed at cutting deaths and serious injuries. And temperatures plummeted to as low as minus 12.5 degrees last night. That's as a second bout of snow brought second days of closures for schools and travel disruptions. Forecasters warn that it's not over yet and the week ahead could bring further nationwide disruption. Those are the headlines for now. More on those stories at the top of the hour.
Tune in to GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Minutes after midday. Thank you, Sophia. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, a new poll finds that nearly 1 in 5 Generation Z Britons would back a strong leader without elections. So we're asking, do young people still believe in democracy?
Well, all that and much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello again, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Goretti is arriving later this week. It's going to bring some very wet, windy and wintry weather across particularly the southern half of the UK. But before all that, the cold and wintry weather continues with further snow issues as well. Particularly across parts of Scotland here, we do have some further snow and ice warnings through the next few days with an occluded front that wraps around, continuing to bring a significant amount of snow to northern parts of Scotland in particular. Otherwise, we see a front pushing its way southeastwards through the rest of today and overnight. That will bring some rain, a bit of sleet, bit of snow. Behind it, yes, it is going to turn drier, but with some clear skies, temperatures plummeting widely to around, if not below freezing. So some frost, some icy patches for many of us first thing tomorrow morning. A few spots of rain, sleet and perhaps a bit of hill snow first thing tomorrow morning across some parts of England and Wales. Generally dry, generally quite bright for many, away from eastern areas where it's quite cloudy. Similar story across Northern Ireland, lots of bright skies, just a few showers here and there, and these could be a bit of a wintry mix. Southern parts of Scotland, largely dry and bright, but across northern parts of Scotland, we continue to see more snow pushing its way in. Snow's going to continue to build up, more travel disruption expected. Through the bulk of the day, it's looking largely fine for many places across the country, except across parts of northern Scotland where it stays quite snowy. Lots of sunshine for most, but clouds starting to build across parts of west and Northern Ireland and southwest England as well. It is again going to be a cold day for many despite the sunshine towards the east, strong gusty winds towards the northeast, but starting to turn milder for a little while across some parts of the southwest. That's because we do have a bit of rain arriving as we go through tomorrow evening. Then, as I mentioned at the start, Storm Goretti is arriving, a deep area of low pressure tracking to the south of the UK, bringing some very wet and windy weather to southern parts and snow for the Midlands.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The A939 is closed at the snow gates between Tomintoul and Cockbridge because of adverse weather. On the M58 westbound, a vehicle tyre change has shut one of 3 lanes between Junction 3 and Junction 1, so expect delays. In Nottinghamshire, the A46 southbound is fully blocked after a vehicle fire, with all lanes closed. And on the trains, the Elizabeth line has major disruption between London Paddington and Heathrow Terminal 5 and Reading, while Great Western Railway is using road transport between Liskeard and Looe, with major disruption between London Paddington and Reading and no services to or from Greenford. For travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Now, a new survey has found that 1/5 of British Generation Z youths... Z youths. I watched Sesame Street. They used to do Z on that.
Yeah, it's American.
No, so I love that. Big Bird. I wonder what happened to Big Bird and all of that. I wonder. So those born after 1997, so is that you?
No. I'm born before 1997,
Wow.
so technically I'm a millennial.
Well, they're in favour of turning the UK into a dictatorship.
That's 1 in 5 of them. Gosh. Well, they said that that Britain would be a better place, rather, if a strong leader was in charge who did not need to bother with Parliament or elections.
That's sort of like the king, isn't it? So we're asking, do young Brits still believe in democracy? Well, joining us now to debate this is political commentator Charlie Downs and political commentator Zayan Al-Bayati. I hope I said that right. Zayan, I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, when you look at the stats suggesting that 1 in 5 people say that they would prefer a strong leader without elections, it's not proof that democracy has failed. It's proof that young people actually feel frustrated, insecure, and unheard. With housing being unaffordable, jobs unstable, the future looking worse than the past, it's tempting to believe that one strong leader would cut through all these issues. However, when you're looking at history and when power is concentrated without any accountability, ordinary people actually lose their rights, their voice, and security. Democracy isn't perfect, however, it's self-correcting, and dictatorship, on the other hand, is not. So the answer to frustration with democracy is to fix on democracy itself, not actually abandon and go for something extreme.
But you've seen Maduro, though. I mean, he was pretty much a dictator, ignored elections. I know he kind of ignored democracy, but he one person leading for such a long time seems to, you know, it kind of sucks up all the power and nobody has anything left. I mean, you've alluded to that. So are you in support of a dictatorship-style leader or not?
No, I wouldn't be in support of a dictatorship because, firstly, it's harder to hold them to account. With a democracy, like the UK, for example, we have a democratic system in which when governments are, for example, during the COVID pandemic, when Boris Johnson had Partygate, he was able to be held to account due to the fact that we have a democratic system, which allows the people to hold people in power to account and gives us ordinary people power as well.
No, it's an important point. And of course, China, which had a zero COVID policy for a long, long time, found it much harder to course correct because there's no sort of democratic accountability. The leader picks one policy. They stayed on that zero policy for far too long. Their growth rate's now below India. I mean, China might well have sort of peaked in terms of its growth. But should we turn to Charlie Downs now? I mean, what does this say about young people in this country?
Well, Tom, I wrote an article about this very topic in the Mail last year when a similar poll to the one that's come out today was released that indicated that it was actually half of Gen Z who are a bit, disaffected with democracy and would favour a dictatorship that doesn't have to do with parliament or elections or any of these sorts of things. And in that article, I laid out some very similar points. So I said about housing is unaffordable. There's no real sense of identity or belonging in this country. Where that does exist, it is, I think, rapidly disappearing. Many people feel like they don't recognize this country anymore. Young people, many of them want to leave. They want to go to live in places in Europe. They want to go to Dubai and so on. And then when we are presented with the opportunity to make our voice heard at an election, when we do so, when we vote, when we participate in this ritual, nothing seems to actually change. And what it actually seems to result in is nothing more than a change in the public-facing element of the state, where whilst the actual direction of travel of the country seems to remain the same. So there is this sense that democracy, as it exists in the United Kingdom today, is a bit of a sham. It's kind of an exercise in theatre, because it seems that the people who are actually calling the shots and running the country on a day-to-day basis are not the people that we see on Question Time in the House of Commons. It does appear to be civil servants, permanent secretaries, people whose names many people don't know, people that we don't elect, and people who seem, by all accounts, very, very difficult to remove. So this is the deeper question here, is not whether democracy is good or bad, but whether we actually have a democracy in this country right now. Because I think to many people, there is a feeling that, in fact, no, we don't have a democracy in this country, because we have a government that locks people up for speech crimes, where we have a culture where expressing any degree of dissent from orthodoxy, from progressive social liberal orthodoxy, is met with social ostracization. That's something I've experienced in my own life. And where the education system, for example, teaches a very specific, very particular ideological view of history and of the world, that if you question, once again, you are sort of ostracized. People lose their jobs for these sorts of things. And so the question is not whether democracy is good or bad, it's whether we have a democracy in this country. And I personally don't feel that we do. And so would it be preferable for us to have a leader that cuts through all of the nonsense that I have just described and restores a sense of strength, of honesty, most importantly, to this country? I mean, I can see the argument.
So you're saying basically democracy is actually an illusion. We're not really in a democratic state at all, because you've got the civil servants who are unelected, who are there, they stay on from subsequent governments, and then they're running things. You don't even know who they are or what they actually do, but they are in control. That is the point you're making. So are you saying then that you'd rather have one solid leader who actually properly led and didn't have all that, and you'd be happy with that, almost like a dictatorship, but that person is leading and they're actually in control?
Well, this I think is the key point here, Nana, is, all sort of systems, all political systems, regardless of what they call themselves, at a certain level, they are all structurally identical. Whether your system calls itself democracy or whether it calls itself a monarchy or communism or fascism or whatever, ultimately there is always a ruling class who are the people at the top of society who make the decisions about who govern the society. They are an organized minority elite. And then there is the disorganized mass of the people.
Is there a fundamental difference here, Charlie? Sorry to interrupt, but when it comes to dictatorships, very often what you have is a very paranoid style at the top of that dictatorship, because there isn't a clear mechanism by which a successor may emerge. And if there's an individual or a group that looks like they may be becoming a successor, very often they're purged, they're got rid of, they're sent to the gulag.
That's kind of what you're saying you've got.
So what we see in dictatorships, unlike systems of rules-based order, whether that's succession through monarchical systems or indeed through democracy, is actually a much less stable system, paradoxically.
Well, what I would say to that is yes, modern secular dictatorship, like the ones seen in the 20th century, absolutely are unstable, and they will lead inevitably to chaos, because there is no accountability, and all of the rest of these arguments that many of us have heard for our entire lives. But actually, if you look back further than that, the system that I would actually genuinely favour as a Catholic, as a Christian, is a Christian monarchy, whereby the leader of the country is born into the role. They are not given a choice as to whether they carry out that role, and they are trained from birth to fulfil that role. And so that, in my view, is how you get the most effective leader. And then there is no question of succession because it is hereditary. And this is a concept that's very alien to the modern liberal mind. But actually, Europe and certainly this country reached its civilizational peak during the Middle Ages when we were governed by
Charlie.
kings.
We were at a civilizational peak in the Middle Ages.
I said that. I actually said that's what the system would be the best one.
What?
Let's get Zain back in for a final thought to you, Zain. Final word to you.
Well, I feel like even if we were to have dictatorships, it would, or any strong single leader, for example, it wouldn't work out at all because firstly, it's based on fear and fear is fragile. So when a dictator falls, the system breaks and collapses to the point where it's much harder to recover than when a democratic system were to democratic system wouldn't even break apart. It would just involve a leader stepping down and we find a new one based on the public vote. And it gives us a voice. You may say that we won't have a voice based on the fact that the governments currently are not doing what the people want. However, there are legislations in force that actually support the people of the UK, such as the welfare state, human rights. Some people forget that we actually have a lot of human rights in this country, whereas other countries such as Saudi Arabia, you're limited to freedom of speech. And that's something that people from the UK take for granted because we have
I think
much
there's
more
a
freedom of
much
speech.
wider discussion we could have there.
We have to leave
wish
it
we
there.
could talk about this for much longer. There's so many points there.
We have to leave it there, Zain, because we are out of time. And thank you very much, Charlie Downs, as well. Really eloquent points, really eloquently made as well. Fascinating. I'm kind of in the middle with that. I sort of agree with Charlie, but I agree with Zain as well.
I think there's a fundamental problem when you have someone who is sort of brought up to be a leader. That's sort of to pretend that everyone has the same capability, everyone has the same intelligence, and you can only just train someone to be a leader. What if you get a duffer? What if you get someone who's, like, remarkably low IQ? You can't just train them up to be a leader.
No, well, yeah, I hear you. Right, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, a cold snap across Britain. We're going to be live in Scotland, where they've been gripped by a big freeze.
But now, if you're in search of some holiday sun across Europe, then check out these destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The cold weather we're experiencing in the UK also affecting Spain at the moment. Warm winds, meanwhile, in Greece, but with some heavy rain ahead of an area of low pressure that is moving through parts of Italy. So wet for Italy, Croatia, much of Greece during Wednesday. Meanwhile, plenty of sunshine for Spain and sunny spells for Portugal, but temperatures well below average on Wednesday, recovering a little later this week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get this on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. What we're going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 PM, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because the failure is you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dewbs and Co weeknights at 6 PM, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Now, Scotland is facing another bitter blast as snow and ice cause widespread disruption.
Hundreds of schools are shut again. Travel is struggling. Warnings now stretch well into Tuesday. Temperatures plunging overnight too. So let's cross to our Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire. Tony, what's it like where you are?
Oh. At Lochrie just now. If you've been following along today, we've been generally moving our way further north from Glasgow at about 6 o'clock this morning. We stopped off in Crieff and Aberfeldy, but it's really here where we're starting to really feel the effects of those amber weather warnings. It has to be said that it's been coming down now for quite some time. The snow was already laying here in the ground, but it's just building and building now. This amber warning covering most of Grampian, with Cairngorms right at the heart of this snow spell, very much going to be lasting through till about 7 PM this evening. And as you mentioned there, this has been a cumulative effect with the Scottish Government contingency meeting yesterday to talk about how to really get through to some of the communities that have been cut off. In fact, the Shadow Secretary of State for Scotland, Andrew Bowie, has actually asked the military to step up and mobilise so that they can get through to some of those cut off smaller villages up in the Highlands and in Grampian. But over the course of today, of course, it hasn't just been Scotland. A yellow weather warning is also over Northern Ireland, and we've just seen the end of various weather warnings down in England as well. But you know, despite the wintry wonderland here, there's a lot of problems in terms of the transport. With Network Rail got their Snowpiercer out to clear the tracks between Inverness and Aberdeen, but as soon as they go one way, they've got to go back and do it all over again. So cold, though, to say the least.
Tony, look at you, you poor thing. It looks so cold. It looks so nice, but yet it's not nice, is it? Not if you're there. Thank you, Tony.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come after the weather forecast.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again, I'm here with your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Storm Goretti is arriving later this week. It's going to bring some very wet, windy and wintry weather across particularly the southern half of the UK. But before all that, the cold and wintry weather continues with further snow issues as well. Particularly across parts of Scotland here, we do have some further snow and ice warnings through the next few days, with an occluded front that wraps around, continuing to bring a significant amount of snow to northern parts of Scotland in particular. Otherwise, we see a front pushing its way southeastwards through the rest of today and overnight. That will bring some rain, a bit of sleet, bit of snow. Behind it, yes, it is going to turn drier, but with some clear skies, temperatures plummeting widely to around, if not below freezing. So some frost, some icy patches for many of us first thing tomorrow morning. A few spots of rain, sleet and perhaps a bit of hill snow first thing tomorrow morning across some parts of England and Wales. Generally dry, generally quite bright for many, away from eastern areas where it's quite cloudy. Similar story across Northern Ireland. Lots of bright skies, just a few showers here and there, and these could be a bit of a wintry mix. Southern parts of Scotland largely dry and bright, but across northern parts of Scotland we continue to see more snow pushing its way in. Snow's going to continue to build up, more travel disruption expected. Through the bulk of the day it's looking largely fine for many places across the country, except across parts of northern Scotland where it stays quite snowy. Lots of sunshine for most, but clouds starting to build across parts of western Northern Ireland and southwest England as well. It is again going to be a cold day for many despite the sunshine towards the east. Strong gusty winds towards the northeast, but starting to turn milder for a little while across some parts of the southwest. That's because we do have a bit of rain arriving as we go through tomorrow evening. Then, as I mentioned at the start, Storm Goretti is arriving, a deep area of low pressure tracking to the south of the UK, bringing some very wet and windy weather to southern parts and snow for the Midlands.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's a brand new year and we're giving you the chance to win our biggest cash prize to date.
£85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours.
And we've come to the Aurora Collection Resort here in Lapland to celebrate.
An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours.
For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 PM on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 PM.
Look, this is winter. It's flu. Flu comes in winter. Sure as eggs is eggs. There's nothing particularly special about the virus. It has mutated, but that change has made it able to spread through the community by defeating our existing immunity. But the virus itself remains the same in terms of its clinical impact. So while it's a problem at a community and population level, lots of cases, for people who catch this, it's no worse than normal seasonal flu. It's not like we've got a supercharged flu that makes people much iller. We've got a virus that's spreading better and it's come earlier. So we're seeing it rising up the sort of infectious disease rates faster for this time of year. And there are a number of reasons for that, partly because it is a different virus, it's mutated. We haven't seen this particular strain spread for a couple of years. So population immunity levels are quite low. That's why it's spreading more.
What you said there, very calm, very rational, quite reassuring, to be honest with you, seems very logical, understandable. Earlier today, the BBC decided to do a report that looked a lot like this. Let's play the clip.
The throwback, isn't it? We were used to wearing these a few years ago. Now this is the precaution being taken. Also, people are being told to make sure their hands are clean and that they're not bringing germs into the hospital.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we haven't got time to play it all, but she goes on to, like, you know, use the hand sanitizer. Again, I'm just wondering if it's a little bit fear-mongery.
Well, look, we must take flu seriously because it's a fact that if we tot up the excess mortality in the wintertime, just in the UK, and we attribute a lot of this excess mortality to flu, in an average year, maybe 5,000-6,000 people will lose their lives to flu. And in a bad year, it might be as high as 20,000. So we don't take this lightly. We're not complacent about flu.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 6th of January. I'm Nana Akua.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
We are in a world which is going to have more threats for a long time to come, and we need to rise up to that and defend against that as well.
Join leaders in Paris imminently for the crucial Ukraine talks as the war approaches 4 years. But President Donald Trump's dramatic action in Venezuela is already looming over the meeting.
And the American president is doubling down on his bid for Greenland, brushing aside warnings that it could tear NATO apart. European leaders, including Britain's Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron, respond firmly, stressing that sovereignty, borders and NATO unity.
Sir Keir Starmer is on his way here to snowy Paris to try and find a way to thaw this frozen peace talks. We're looking at maybe 9% of the way there. Let's see what can happen with Zelensky's behind me having lunch with Emmanuel Macron.
Excellent stuff with Chopper there at the heart of the Elysee Palace. But elsewhere, drivers over the age of 70 will be forced to take... Perhaps they are over the edge, who knows? But they'll be forced to take eye tests every 3 years. This under new plans to improve road safety. But is it a good idea?
Chancellor Rachel Reeves blocks support for pubs, even as Sir Keir Starmer admits many will suffer under his business rate changes.
And police chiefs are under scrutiny after it's alleged anti-Semitic preachers at mosques were consulted on the Maccabi Tel Aviv fan ban.
And snow grips the UK, causing major travel disruption and school closures. Find out if your area will be affected.
Yeah, 2 amber weather warnings engulf the north of Scotland as the snow comes down and down and down. I'm in Pitlochry and we'll have all the news of slow closures, rail closures and road closures as the snow grips Scotland.
I just must say, poor Tony. You can see that he's really cold there.
Oh, what a trooper! Yeah, it's not the only cold thing that we've sent him on, of course. Because Cameron, you were presenting when Tony dipped into the. Oh, I thought it was the two of you. Yeah.
Well, I think we dipped him into the river, not the river, the Firth of Forth.
Himself.
By Edinburgh, yeah, it was very, very cold for him. But also Chopper in Paris, he's also covered in snow, or snow on the ground, whereas we're all in a nice warm studio. What a shame.
But you could see Chopper was cold because he was going...
Oh, goodness me. Yeah, it's a day to be thankful to be in the studio around the nice desk. But, of course, Charlie, you've had your fair share of standing outside in the cold, outside buildings, outside courthouses, usually.
Yeah, I'm often in parking lots as well. I get all the great places to go. I was saying we're plotting Cameron's royal travel for the year, actually, in the news desk earlier, and I was saying, Cameron, why won't the King and Queen go to West Yorkshire or come with me to a nice overnight stay in Oldham and beyond? But no.
They've got warm places to be, Charlie.
His Royal Highness Cameron Walker has got better plans ahead.
That's the thing about the Commonwealth. I mean, if you think of all of the islands that Britain once owned and are now part of this, I mean, it's places like the Bahamas. I mean, it's places out in the oceanic territories near Australia.
Yes.
I mean, it's all quite nice parts of the world.
Well,
really.
it is, yeah. The Pacific, Caribbean, Canada, though, that's pretty cold at the moment.
Oh, yes.
But we seem adamant in giving things away, though, like Chagos. I mean, I don't quite get that.
Get Cameron to Diego Garcia. Get him down there. Filming the launches of American bombers.
Well,
that'd be great for you.
If the King or the Prince of Wales wants to see some soft diplomacy there, I'll go.
Well, you heard it here first. What a 2026 it's going to be. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.
Yes, Cameron to the Chagos. But, 5 minutes after 1 o'clock, it's fast approaching. The Prime Minister is heading... I'll try again. The Prime Minister is heading to Paris to meet world leaders for talks between the so-called coalition of the willing.
Well, of course, the focus is on Ukraine and whether momentum can be maintained behind this fragile peace deal being worked up.
And all of this comes as European leaders issue a joint statement on Greenland. And the statement stresses that NATO has made clear that the Arctic is a strategic priority and that European allies are stepping up to defend it.
Well, let's cross over to Paris, to the Elysee Palace, where our political editor, Christopher Hope, is for us. Chris, of course, Ukraine top of the agenda, but there's a lot else to discuss there too.
Yeah, that's right. There are two strands here, I think, Tom and Nana. The Ukraine talks, the peace talks, if you like. 90% there, we're told by President Volodymyr Zelensky. He's inside now with Emmanuel Macron having a lunch. On the way here are 26 other EU leaders, notably Chancellor Merz from Germany, and of course our own Sir Keir Starmer, having had that cabinet meeting this morning. It's all eyes on where they can take it next. Now, we are told that already it's been agreed there will be some form of combined cell set up between the US, the Coalition of the Willing and Ukraine, based in Paris. This will be a cell to coordinate the defence of Ukraine. That is the first almost the manifestation, I think, of what these protections could look like, these security guarantees from the United States. Those guarantees would include support for the rebuilding of Ukraine's armed forces and support deterrence, according to a draft statement before the meeting already released. They also say that the Allies support Ukraine's stand and they're ready to commit to a system of legally and politically legally binding guarantees to be activated once a ceasefire is agreed. So we're getting towards an offer that can be made to Russia. The question next, of course, is what does Putin do with it and how far will America lean into those security guarantees? So the Ukraine piece, that will be hearing later with the press conference with Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, Chancellor Merz at 5:45, expected 5:45 on GB News. The second strand, of course, is, as you're saying there, with Charlie Peters and Greenland. Now, there's already been some language of support from the EU leaders already about Greenland because of Donald Trump's attempt to, or is eyeing up covetously, maybe annexing that royal kingdom, of course, controlled by Denmark. There was a joint statement released by Denmark's Prime Minister's office. They say the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, the UK and others make clear that Greenland belongs to its people, and that NATO has made clear that the Arctic region is a priority and European allies are stepping up for security in the Arctic. So that's a twin-pronged attack. It feels quite like Greenland here, frankly, in the courtyard of the Elysee Palace. We're standing on snow. There's a huge Christmas tree behind me covered in snow. It's a very wintry Paris. The question now is whether these three and a half year long war in Ukraine, will we see some form of a peace deal agreed or gone towards agreed that can be taken to Russia later today.
All right, Christopher Hope, thank you very much. Let's now go live to Downing Street, where GB News' chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster, has just left a briefing with the Prime Minister's spokesperson. All right, so Catherine, what can you tell us about what went on in that briefing?
Yes, well, first of all, welcome to a pretty chilly Downing Street, though I can't offer you snow. But the Prime Minister, of course, was here chairing Cabinet. He invited the cameras in. I have to say he read a lot about tackling the cost of living. His Cabinet members didn't look as jolly and happy and supportive as I think they might have done, given the cameras were there to sort of put out a united front. But the lobby briefing with political journalists, again, demonstrates the problem that the Prime Minister has in getting any airtime for the things he wants to talk about, because frankly it was 90% about Donald Trump and Greenland, a little bit about Venezuela too, but the threat to Greenland, which seems to be ever more real. And somebody actually asked the Prime Minister's official spokesman if Donald Trump was a threat to the UK's national security. Now, of course, as you would expect, he said that Donald Trump was not a threat, but clearly the language coming out of America is very, very concerning. Now, the Prime Minister does not want to criticise Donald Trump. He absolutely can't, can he? Because we need America to play a very critical role in support of Ukraine if and when we get that ceasefire. But when pushed, we did get a few comments like that there have always been moments to question whether the rules-based international order is working as intended. That was in answer to the comments that Steve Miller made, a top Trump aide, about going into Greenland, and that basically if the US went into Greenland, that nobody could stop them militarily. We asked about Article 5 and if the Prime Minister still held it as sacrosanct. That is an attack on one NATO member, is an attack on all. We're told that yes, absolutely. But really, they do not want to talk about Greenland. They kept saying, let's not get in to hypotheticals. I asked about defence spending too, given that the threats that we face don't only seem to be coming from Russia. The government have made a lot of this, but the reality is that the big increase in defence spending isn't promised really till the next Parliament, given the challenges that we face now. I do wonder whether that might change. But a continuation of saying decisions for Greenland are only for Greenland and Denmark, nobody else, not wanting to criticise America, batting those sorts of questions away on Brexit, a possible Brexit betrayal. They stressed what they call are clear, indisputable benefits of closer alignment. Of course, what we're hearing is possible dynamic alignment where we might ultimately have to be subject to EU rules and regulations on food and so on. We're not hearing anything about the details of that or how much indeed we might have to pay. I think that is something we'll be hearing a lot more about, though, in future weeks and months.
All right, Catherine Forster, thank you very much. I don't understand why Keir Starmer is so obsessed with constant alignment with the EU. It's because in terms of trading and in terms of its growth, it's not doing that well at all. In my view, he'd probably be wiser to align with America and carry on with the trade deal and then not say anything about the whole Greenland issue. I think that would be wiser.
Yeah, I wonder, though, I mean, given that it's such a large proportion of our trade, I mean, it's still a minority of our trade, but it is a large proportion of our trade. If the Prime Minister doesn't want to use the Brexit freedoms to deregulate, to make it easier to do business domestically, I can see why he sort of thinks, well, we might as well accept all of these EU rules because he doesn't have the courage to make the rules himself.
It's not what people voted for. I mean, I just find some of his interventions, because they're so minimal and pointless that it's almost as though you might as well not say anything at all.
Well, shall we speak to the parliamentary sketch writer Quentin Letts now? Because, Quentin, the Prime Minister has found himself, well, fairly absent from Parliament.
Well, he didn't find himself. We found him absent. There was a Commons statement last night on Venezuela. Big story, big excitement, a lot of interest. And you would have thought that the Prime Minister would want to come to the House of Commons for two reasons. One, to tell the nation what he thinks about the Venezuela matter, but also to shore up himself in the Labour Party, the Parliamentary Party. He didn't turn up. He left it to Yvette Cooper. She didn't have a particularly good outing. And the absence of the Prime Minister became more and more of a story as the statement went on, as the session went on. And this showed, really, that the Venezuela matter has exposed the Prime Minister's character, or lack of it, some would say, his indecision, his willingness to say nothing in order to make life easy for himself. Well, you can't really do that if you're Prime Minister. You get found out. You have to take a view on things. And so, therefore, I think we learn a little bit more about the Prime Minister every time he doesn't show up. It's a bit of a paradox, but absence can be very instructive.
So apparently, maybe he's going on the premise that absence makes the heart grow fonder, because he's not very popular at the moment, is he? I mean, this is a really bad day for Keir Starmer, frankly, because he, as you said, if it were me, I think I'd probably want to stay silent on the matter, but he really can't, can he? What do you think? What do you think he needs to do now to sort of almost, garner some sort of faith that we can actually do something?
He needs to make up his mind. He needs to make up his mind what his position is on Donald Trump. He needs to make up his mind on Brexit and all the promises that he's made. But also there was a very instructive moment last night when Richard Bergen, who's admittedly a left-wing Labour backbencher, came out and said, while standing in the House of Commons, attacked his own Prime Minister for being cowardly and craven. Now, this was pretty remarkable, and if someone from the governing party says that, you would normally expect the other backbenchers around this attacker to say, oh, come on, that's outrageous, you can't say that. There was none of that. There were a lot of people sitting around Mr. Bergen when he attacked the Prime Minister, and they all sort of sat there and they looked as though they slightly agreed with it. And that was a moment when the theatre of the House of Commons was very instructive. It showed you the lack of backbench support for Sir Keir, and that was a worrying moment. There were a couple of people rolled their eyes, but otherwise everyone just sort of sat there saying, yeah, Bergen's onto something. And that showed you that by staying away from the House of Commons, the Prime Minister was actually weakening his own position with his backbench troops. Had he been there himself, it would have been much harder harder for Richard Bergen and others in the chamber to attack the Prime Minister personally. And therefore, it's not a good strategy. Keir Starmer might think it's a good idea to stay away and to be ambivalent, which is sometimes a good diplomatic route. But actually, in parliamentary terms, if you're not there, then you're more likely to be attacked and slagged off. And, it's reaching the point, amazing we should be saying that when he's got such a big majority. But his position really does look pretty wobbly.
Absolutely fascinating. So many people so often criticise the so-called Punch and Judy nature of Commons business. But this is where it really matters. You can see whether this is a Prime Minister who has support from the people behind him or otherwise. And now this moniker, Never Hear Keir, seems to be ever more prescient, ever more prevalent, because he wasn't in the Commons last night, and today he's not even in the country. He's off in Paris, so we'll be seeing him a little bit later. But Quentin, thanks indeed for joining us and talking through. Absolutely,
it was a great piece,
extraordinary stuff for sure.
Yeah, you can check out his piece in the Daily Mail. It was actually a very good piece, almost entertaining as well. But listen, frankly, even Anna Sarwar, so leader of the Scottish Conservatives, even he... Labour, sorry, not the Conservatives, even he, was saying that Keir Starmer should potentially step aside, and that is when you're getting people who are actually leading a part of your party in another part of the country. That is concerning.
I do feel a bit sorry for Anna Sarwar. He was nailed on to become the next First Minister of Scotland, and then Keir Starmer became Prime Minister and tanked the Labour brand, and now he'd be lucky to get second place.
Well, he's suggesting perhaps Keir Starmer should step aside. So what do you think? So this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Coming up, we'll bring you live arrivals of world leaders as they arrive in Paris for the coalition of the willing meeting. But after the break,
we'll debate whether over 70s should be made to have an eyesight test if they wish to continue driving. You won't want to miss this one. The one and only Anne Widdecombe will be up against the one and only Edwina Currie.
Yes, don't go anywhere. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 1:20 and big changes could be coming to Britain's roads, especially for older drivers.
Ministers want eyesight checks, possible cognitive tests, tougher alcohol rules and new seatbelt penalties, all in the name of safety. But is this sensible reform or unfair age targeting?
Well, we're joined by none other than former Conservative MPs, Edwina Currie and Anne Widdecombe. Thanks so much for both joining us. We're going to give the opening batting to you, Anne. What do you make of this idea for mandatory eye tests for the over 70s?
Well, I don't think it's a bad idea as such, but I do think several things. First of all, if you look at young people, they are the greater cause of accidents. Only 7% of them are licence holders. They cause 25% of accidents, and you get a very tragic loss of about 1,500 young lives every year. So I would actually be looking at the young rather than the elderly. Having said that, yes, people should have their eyes checked, but what I fear about this is, particularly with this government, it's going to be one great leviathan of a bureaucracy. I mean, take somebody like me. I get my eyes tested every single year at Moorfields. You know, not at some tin pot place, at Moorfields every year. Are they going to accept that? No, no, no. I shall have to go to a specified optician. I shall have to fill in a specified form. I shall have to pay a specified fee. And at the end of it, the only gain will be the opticians with the government contract. They'll gain from it. I don't actually think there's going to be a massive contribution to road safety, because I think elderly people are self-limiting anyway. I mean, I don't do anything like as much long-distance driving as I used to. I don't drive at night as often as I used to. You know, we become self-limiting. Naturally, we're fairly sensible types, really.
I hear you, but I guess that's part of the problem, because elderly people, and I don't consider you old, or you, Edwina, I don't consider you old. I feel I'm heading towards your age anyway. But I think sometimes elderly people can be quite stubborn as well. So even if their eyes are sort of failing, they might, and they want their independence, I totally understand that too, then they might continue. Edwina Currie, where do you sit with this?
Well, old ladies like Anne and myself are entirely sensible and do all the right things. It's old men that are really there is a real problem, whether we like it or not. The figures are really quite grim reading. Something like a quarter of all the drivers that get killed on our roads, and this has been true for several years now, are people over 70. They actually get killed, and one of the reasons they get killed is that they're not looking, they can't judge speed or distance, they don't see a pedestrian, they get involved in collisions and they get killed themselves, and so often do their passengers. And if you look at the figures as well of older drivers involved in accidents, it's tended to go up steadily over the last 20 years. Partly because there's more older drivers, while actually the number of accidents that involve younger drivers has gone down steadily. It's gone down by about 45% over 20 years. So the numbers are kind of scary. And what happens when you get to 70 is you have to keep reapplying for your licence every 3 years. And it's a tick box exercise. And you have to say if you can see and if you are, you know, compos mentis and all the rest of it. So if you want to go on driving, you just kind of tick the boxes over and over again. I hear what Anne says about opticians, but I'd much rather be putting money into opticians' pocket than into morticians, and that's what's happening at the moment.
OK, wow, a lot there. Anne, firstly on this gender point, so do we have a blind spot here when it comes to older male drivers?
It is mostly men.
It isn't just older male drivers. The number of accidents caused by the young, which, as I said, is quite disproportionate. Whether it's going up or down doesn't make any difference. It's disproportionate. It's 7% of licence holders to 25% of accidents. But the vast majority of them, this is where Edwina's right, are by men. Because young men love their first cars. They love to be drivers. And they show off, of course. And they take risks. And so I think that there is a gender point there. But to me, the most important thing is this. It's proportionality. trying to make everybody over the age of 70 go to a specified place with a specified form, etc., etc., I think is not going to be productive. I do agree with Edwina that, if you really are unscrupulous, you just tick the boxes. But I would like to see figures on how many of the over 70s have their eyes tested, probably more than every 3 years anyway. And also this idea that it's only the elderly that have eyesight problems, you are joking. I mean, most of those problems start in middle age when you haven't quite realised that you've got the problem. Elderly people are aware of seeing, of hearing, of walking, of all the things they can't do. Middle-aged people are not, and sometimes they need glasses for a few years before they actually get them.
Yeah, you do make a good point about the glasses thing, because I can see my eyes are good, but I'm resisting. I very rarely wear my glasses because I don't want to. You know what I mean? so I hear exactly what you're saying about that, and I do agree that young men in particular, some of them, I mean, Tom's a young, firstly, he's only just passed his test, actually, by the way.
I learned embarrassingly late in life. I had to do it by my 30th year on this planet, but now I've done it, and I do have my first car. I haven't yet got a speeding ticket, but we'll see. It's quite a fun little car. But Edwina, is there a point here that just roads are a lot safer than they used to be? The number of road deaths we have now is far, far, far lower than it has been in decades past. Fewer people drink drive. More people know the safety stuff. Everyone wears their seatbelt. I mean, how much more safe do roads really need to become?
Well, it's also the drivers. Most accidents these days, because you're right, roads are much safer, but cars are much heavier. And one of the problems is that older drivers don't always adjust. I mean, the number of older people that I know that say, oh, I don't like driving at night because the lights are so bright. Part of the problem could well be they've got cataracts without realising it. I remember when my late husband had his cataracts removed and he looked out the window and went, oh, my God, it's so green out there. He had no idea he had cataracts, absolutely no idea, except that it was causing him some problems when he was driving at night. Thank God he never had an accident. But there are a hell of a lot of people out there who are the same sort of age as in their 70s and more stupid than my husband was. I know people in their 80s and even their 90s who are insisting on driving because otherwise they fear they will lose their independence.
Yeah.
To them, my answer is, look, take the insurance money that you're going to save by not having a car and spend it on taxis. Hey.
All right. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure to speak to you both. Thank you so much for your views. There's the former Conservative MPs, Edwina Curry and Anne Widdecombe. Thank you very much, you guys. Yeah, exactly what Edwina said. That is the point that I made earlier. A lot of older people continue to drive because, if the walking isn't so good and you can't go as far as you normally would, a car is convenient, and also it's the independence. Yeah. And just as you get older, you don't want to let go of that. And so if the car is the final bit of independence, you'll hold on to it for dear life, even if your eyes are slightly fading.
And here's another sort of slightly peculiar thing. I mean, if you are a young person, you're much more likely to live somewhere where there's very good public transport. If you're an older person, you're more likely to live in a more rural area. I mean, look at the population of London, for instance, where there are tubes and buses and night buses and everything under the sun, right? You can get around. In fact, in some parts of London, it's quite inconvenient to own a car. And yet it's completely the other way round in much of the rest of the country, where you couldn't do your shop without a car, where the nearest shop is sort of drive to and miles away.
Well, see, that's why many old people want to keep hold of their cars. In fact, I suspect some people don't want to have the eye test, to be told that they can't have the car, because they don't want to hear that. So that is another thing as well. And I think as we get a little bit older, we get a little bit more cantankerous. I mean, I know I am. I've become totally cantankerous. I don't really care what anybody thinks. I just, although when it comes to driving, I'm very careful.
Although I know this government has a new mission of building lots of houses. I just think that it will make a big, big problem if we build sort of soulless housing estates. So it's just house plonked in field next to house plonked in field, no community, drive to, sort of, that's that there. What we need to build is communities where there's a village and a village shop and a post office.
Yeah, that's a long-term... great.
Because if everything's dare I say it, if it's a 15-minute city where you've got your amenities close by...
Have you heard of Wavo?
I have heard of Waymo.
They're the driverless cars.
Yes.
When I went to San Francisco... Waymo, that's it. They're the driverless cars in San Francisco.
They're coming to London this year.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, you know, for older people, Waymo might be the way to go. Waymo. Yeah.
I think there are going to be a couple of companies that do the driverless cars for London. Let's hope they spread around the country.
Interestingly enough, they use a Jaguar.
Really?
Yeah, in San Francisco, the little Jaguars, which I thought, that's nice.
But they are already safer than humans driving.
Oh, that's
because they don't get tired, they don't get drunk, they don't get cantankerous. I mean...
Well, do you know, they're actually a bit too polite. Because if you don't let them in... So if the cars are all going and there's no room for the Waymo to go in San Francisco, you see a queue of them just waiting.
They'll all wait.
They're just waiting like that.
And some people go to these cars in quite a mean way because they know that the car is programmed to be ultra safe.
Oh,
you can sort of serve in front of the car and just make it stop, and you can sort of inch forward.
Nice.
It's not very nice, but I think they are updating them. They now go on motorways, whereas they didn't used to.
God help.
And they are being a bit more assertive, because when you drive, sometimes you do need to be a bit assertive. You need to sort of nudge your way into the lane, otherwise you don't get into the lane.
Well, that's right. That's the problem with Waymo. Waymo is way too polite. But listen, we've also been asking, should drivers over 70 be forced to have eye tests? You can vote in our You Decide poll. And so far, 55% of you said yes, 45% of you said no.
Right, on to world affairs now. European world leaders have started gathering in Paris for this Coalition of the Willing summit.
European world leaders have also been discussing what's going on in Greenland and also what's going on in Ukraine. So joining us now, Christopher Hope. He's there in Paris for the Coalition of the Willing summit. Let's get an update and find out what's going on. Christopher. Oh, he's not there, but he will possibly appear under... Oh, he is there. He is there. Hopefully he'll be speaking to us in a matter of moments. But this is the thing. For me, the Coalition of the Willing...
Oh, I think we've got Christopher Hope. Christopher, what can you see?
Hi, Tom. Well, it's a snowbound Elysee Palace. We're still waiting for world leaders to arrive. We're expecting that from now, 1:30 your time. We know there's been already a draft agreement released by the Coalition of the Willing, including binding commitments to support Ukraine in the case of a future armed attack by Russia in order to restore peace. What they don't want, the countries here, is for a peace deal to be agreed and Russia can then rearm and then re-invade Ukraine at a future date. Also, they agreed to continue long-term military assistance and arms to Ukraine forces with US support, and the countries will take part in a US-led ceasefire monitoring and verification mechanism. And also, there'll be a cell established here to monitor Ukraine with the Coalition of the Willing countries plus the US, and that'll be based in Paris. So we are expecting imminently to see around 30 world leaders arrive here. 39 countries and institutions are due to attend. Number 10 tells us the focus is on driving momentum towards peace. Leaders will be discussing what we're told are some tactical points around deployment, as well as integrating US and the coalition planning. Deployment is a key word because at some point we're going to hear more about the deployment of UK troops somehow to help preserve the peace as part of this Coalition of the Willing, and how that looks and how that shapes up is something which GBNews viewers will look at very closely. There's been a two-strand approach towards peace. There's been obviously the political side. We know about that, the regular meetings, the phone calls between Donald Trump and also with the members of this Coalition of the Willing, the 27 or so different countries. But aside from that, there's also military planning, and that started back in February, March at the Lancaster House summit, which we attended for GBNews last year, but nearly a year ago now. For example, at the weekend, we understand there were over a dozen national security advisors, including the UK's, gathered in Kyiv for talks. Military plans are due to be in place. They want to try and keep the peace, air, land and sea, to protect Ukraine. We do think that around 90% of the peace deal has been agreed, but of course the final 10% is the hardest part. That'll be the land which may have to be surrendered or put into a neutral territory between Russia and Ukraine, and also the scale of those military guarantees. We're going to see people like Sir Keir Starmer here. We'll see Emmanuel Macron on those steps welcoming those world leaders shortly. For America, Steve Witkoff, who's the chief negotiator, and Jared Kushner, of course, he's Donald Trump's son-in-law. He'll be here too. In the building behind me, we understand that Emmanuel Macron and President Volodymyr Zelensky are wrapping up their lunch. We're expecting this meeting to start at 2:10 your time and then go forward with a press conference of Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, Zelensky and Friedrich Merz from Germany. That'll be around 5:45 UK time. However, UK government aides here with me are saying that could all slip because there's a real feeling that what's happened in Venezuela and what may happen in Greenland is really focusing attention on getting some ground made. I should say, of course, when I say a peace deal is 90% agreed, what that means is it's agreed by the coalition of the willing, Ukraine and the US. It doesn't mean it's been agreed by Russia. And what we're expecting, the geopolitics here, is that Zelensky wants a deal to be agreed with all those countries named, and then for Putin in Russia to either accept it or reject it. If he rejects it, then he's going against the world order. And of course, being dangled out for Russia is this hope that for them that they can re-enter the global system, rejoin the G7, make it the G8. All these ideas are being held out to try and entice Vladimir Putin to agree some form of peace deal.
Much symbolism.
And we're looking at the steps there.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, Chris, that there's so much symbolism about this being hosted in the Elysee Palace, in the heart of Paris, with Emmanuel Macron hosting. I was reading a little bit earlier today an excerpt from a book by Jonathan Powell. Now, he's the National Security Advisor to Keir Starmer, but over a decade ago, he wrote a book called The New Machiavelli. And in that book, he spelled out two different ways to approach the Americans. He called it the British way and the French way. He said the French way, pioneered by de Gaulle, was to be as cussed as possible in the hope that the Americans will seek after you and pay a price to bring you back on board. Be as awkward as possible. And the other way is the traditional British way, which is to be as close as possible to the Americans. Try and be involved in their decision-making structure. Be invited to their meetings. Be their friends. I wonder if Keir Starmer as Prime Minister is now edging away from that traditional, perhaps Blairite or even Thatcherite model of being close to the Americans, and is instead opting for a more French route of being difficult, of being awkward, of, dare I say it, being anti-American.
Yes, and maybe being more like that character that Hugh Grant played of the UK Prime Minister in Love Actually, as you're describing there, Tom, very eloquently. That could be the case. I think, as ever, and since the Second World War we've faced it, we have to choose, although it would be said it'd be a false choice were Keir Starmer standing with us now, that you must choose between European Union or the US, and we try and have our cake and eat it, and that's why you're seeing this delicate language about the seizing of the leader and his wife of Venezuela, Maduro, over the weekend. But I think what could be a deal breaker, of course, could be if anything happens with Greenland. Now, there has been a joint statement released by the Danish government, and they tell us it's agreed by most of the main countries: France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, Denmark, and others. A car arriving now. I'll let you know who is when they get out. I can't quite see any flags on it yet, but I'm looking at it's Australia's president. This could be Albanese. This is Australia delegation arriving now for the coalition of the willing talks. We'll see who gets out. But just to go back there is a joint agreement here. We're told it's agreed by those countries. It's quite interesting. I think that Denmark should release that before the talks are underway. Of course, what Denmark wouldn't do is that any pledge for Greenland to be watered down or changed by a wider meeting. So clearly they want to get that out there early. Looking now, this could be the Australian Prime Minister arriving, or certainly someone representing Australia. Let's see. No, it's not the Australian Prime Minister, Albanese, but that is the Australian delegation arriving for the coalition at the Willing. That's the first car in. There's a queue of cars now around the courtyard, the snowbound courtyard here in Paris, in the Elysee Palace. I'm looking to see who might be going to the next one. But there's two issues here at play in this major talks. Ukraine, we know about that, but Greenland's on the table ever since the weekend when we saw what happened in Venezuela. Now this is the Cypriot delegation arriving, approaching the steps. Looking now, they're having their names checked by now they're climbing out now to walk. Let's see. I think this is the Cypriot Prime Minister. You can see there. And there's a long line now of cars with diplomatic licence plates queuing up to enter the courtyard here. We're expecting Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer to arrive within 15-20 minutes. So it's a long list of here. We've got now, this is I can't quite tell the flag there on this car approaching now. So climbing out now from the steps, and we have seen, I think that's the leader of Cyprus arriving now, shaking hands. We haven't been given a list of who's coming to this. It's been quite a fluid number of names of people who are expected. Here we have it. This could be the Irish delegation arriving. Let's see. Getting out there. I can't see Emmanuel Macron welcome. It looks like being welcomed by an aide to Emmanuel Macron. And here we have that's the Irish delegation dropping off there, and here comes the Turkish delegation. Again, I'm not clear if these are the prime ministers or not, or just senior figures from each different government. But this is Turkey arriving now. This shows the scale and the importance of what's happening here in Paris. I think there's a renewed focus on these Ukrainian peace talks after what happened in Venezuela at the weekend. And of course, the future of Greenland under threat, and that's of huge concern to Denmark. There's a wave there from the Turkish leader. That's for now, Tom, and I can see no more vehicles are queuing up to enter, but we are seeing these talks now getting underway again, and we're expecting Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, who has come from that cabinet meeting earlier which Catherine Forster was discussing. He is on the way from London.
I just wanted to ask Christopher a question, though, very, very briefly, because some people will be watching this, and we were talking about Greenland earlier, and maybe wondering why Greenland is so strategically important to the US. Why is it so strategically important to them?
Well, it's not least where it sits. It sits between the top of the world, abutting Canada. It is obviously also abutting the Arctic Circle, and that's where I think there's so much concern about the future of Greenland. That's why it matters so much, I think, to world leaders, and that's why we're seeing language already emerging from the world leaders about the sanctity of the Arctic Circle. In this statement put out by the Danish government, they say is agreed by the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, the UK and Denmark. They say that security in the Arctic must be achieved collectively in conjunction with NATO allies, including the US. These are universal principles, they say, and we will not stop defending them. It's for Denmark and Greenland and them only to decide on matters concerning Denmark and Greenland. And it's all about Arctic security. As we see increasing global warming, there are passages opening up in the Arctic Circle, which will be much more able to be used by boats and vessels and the like, and that's why I think that's what's so important. There's also, of course, some element of oil extraction there too.
And it's particularly Russia, which, I mean, currently the only way that it can access navigable trade routes is very limited. But if the North Pole opens up and gets warmer and more navigable, then suddenly Russia has trade routes with all sorts of countries around the world from its main population centres. America wants to keep an eye on those.
All right, Christopher, thank you very much. We will keep you up to date with that when Keir Starmer arrives at the coalition of the willing, something that he was very close to his heart, Keir Starmer, because he sort of set it up, didn't he? Yeah.
Well, there's still much more coming on today's programme. Of course, we'll bring you Sir Keir Starmer when he arrives at the Elysee Palace, but elsewhere.
Cold snaps across the UK will be live in Scotland, where they've been gripped by a big freeze.
All of that and indeed more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Well, you're absolutely right. Spot on. I couldn't help feeling that perhaps it was actually just a joke. And they were going to come back in 2 years' time and say, we took you all in. It was, in fact, a joke. Now we're going to produce something more serious, because it's absolutely hilarious and ridiculous. Commercial suicide, I described it as.
Well, the individual behind it is no more. What would you like to see from the brand? Presumably not people with asymmetric haircuts in pink dresses with sledgehammers doing precisely zero to do with cars.
Well, again, absolutely, you're spot on. I mean, it's just totally unrelated to cars at all. It wasn't even a car in the advert. Jaguar was built on style, and that brought passion for cars. That's what made them different. I remember many years ago, a Jaguar executive in the States saying to me, people say, I like my Mercedes, but I love my Jaguar. It's all about passion. Style engendered that. That's what we've got to have. We need to see a proper, more traditional, stylish, real Jaguar that can build on the brand and heritage of the past.
OK, Philip Porter, I'm going to put you on the spot now. If you're in charge of the next Jaguar advert, what would it look like?
As diametrically opposite and different as it possibly could be from what they produced. I suppose, I mean, I live a little in the past, I admit, although I also think I'm hopefully realistic about the current situation and everything, the present. But I'd like to see the heritage shown. Jaguar were not afraid to talk in the past about their heritage, the Le Mans wins back in the 50s, the E-Type in the 60s. This is what added excitement and luster to the brand.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. This is sort of my guilty pleasure here, watching, not watching somebody freezing in the snow, but sort of interesting. Scotland's facing another bitter blast as snow and ice cause widespread disruption.
Yes, hundreds of schools are shut again, travel is struggling, and warnings now stretch well into Tuesday. Well, that's today. With temperatures plunging overnight, forecasters say that the worst may not be over just yet.
All right, come on then, let's cross over now to GB News' Scotland reporter, Tony Maguire. Tony, oh, you've taken your hood off. How are you feeling? Are you cold? Are your feet frozen? Your fingers, are they frozen or?
Yeah, thank you so much for taking such delight in my misery, Nana. I just wanted to let you know that every time you disappeared off camera, I can hear you very loudly cackling at my misfortune. GB News absolutely sends me to all the best places, but if this hasn't been, quite frankly, the best free advertising campaign for Visit Scotland, then I don't know what is. It is beautiful here in Pitlochry. We can see the River Tay just behind us there, and honestly, it's just been a really lovely experience driving up through Scotland in the wintry weather, but of course that has brought so much disruption as well. These 2 amber warnings sitting over the Highlands, sitting over Grampian, with the Cairngorm mountain range right at the centre of that, up to 15 centimetres of snow in some higher regions, 5 to 10 centimetres elsewhere, but here in Pitlochry at least that moderate snow is kind of slowed down now to kind of just a light dusting, but of course that is going to continue. This amber warning anyway, all the way through to 7 o'clock tonight. Schools across the north of Scotland closed for a second day. Let's not forget that's backing on to the 2-week Christmas holidays. I'm sure parents in the north of Scotland absolutely loving that. But certainly the kids, we've seen a few sledging out and about today. Not so many snowball fights, though I have tried to instigate a couple to varying degrees of effectiveness. But otherwise, this has been, a kind of a real reminder. It feels like not long ago Scotland was suffering from a chronic case of wildfires due to the hot weather of last year. But this January very much brings back memories of Beast from the East so many years ago, which saw Scotland brought to an absolute frozen standstill. Nevertheless, of course, there's equal disruption on the roads. Many roads closed up north, especially as you get a little bit kind of further north than where we are just now. And one of my favourite maybe social posts in terms of the weather has been from Network Rail Scotland. They have a train with a snowplough at the front of it, and it's been really busy ploughing the lines between Inverness and Aberdeen. And of course, but it's been so heavy in places that once it gets to one side, then it pretty much has to double back and come back again. If you've kind of followed with the book and the TV series, you understand why I've been calling it Snowpiercer all afternoon. But certainly here, this is looking to continue. Of course, we are in the middle of January. This is now the depths of winter. But looking around this kind of winter wonderland, you might like to know that it's only 347 days till Christmas. So, if that doesn't get you in the mood this weather, then I don't know what will.
Well, Tony, thanks so much for bringing us this just majestic scene, seeing the snowfall in front of you, seeing it settle all around. I mean, surely you're going to be making a postcard out of this one.
Yeah, there's certainly a few Instagram shots have been photographed today. I'll say that much. Cameraman's been putting in double time today, and I think these stories are kind of two sides, right? Because you can't help but kind of stop to take in the beauty of it all. But of course, behind every picturesque scene, there's many villages in Scotland that are completely cut off. And of course, they're going through a logistical nightmare just now, not just with the schools and the transport, but, vans and lorries getting in to stock up local shops and stuff. So, we're really lucky and grateful that we're able to cover this story the way that we are. But of course, it's always good to be mindful that in the most remote parts, not just of Scotland, I'm sure Northern Ireland, England, Wales, all have similar towns and villages which feel the kind of pain of this really heavy snowfall. But for the rest of us, certainly, it's no reason not to stop and take in the beauty of it all.
Yeah, totally, of course. On a serious note, that is true, isn't it? The snow can be quite a difficult thing to deal with, to navigate if you're in a village or you're locked off from it. And, of course, it's very expensive to keep homes warm. But I just want to see the bit when Tony goes into the water. Can we see that?
Yeah. I think I will say there's a river down there, and I almost suggested then that we dip down into the river here, but no. I know that video online has got a lot of fanfare, but certainly I think my voice will never recover from that. But hey, you don't want to be doing a story like that if you don't have a sense of humour, right?
Is it the Forth of Firth or the Firth of Forth?
The Firth of Forth, yeah. We didn't do too well with the naming conventions, I think, of our waterways up here, but the Firth of Forth is that stretch of water that comes from about Grangemouth all the way through to Edinburgh and out, of course, to the east of the country. Very, very cold, and yeah, I obviously wasn't expecting it. Some chat about my AirPods. I had the good sense to take one out, but of course, headphones come in a pair, but when the water's that cold, that kind of sense kind of loses you altogether. But they're still surviving. We'll see how water resistant they are, I think, in the days and weeks to come ahead. But really glad to do it. That's a huge event at the start of every January, and I know they happen all over the UK. I've never done it. Right. Got the T-shirt, and really glad I could do it. I'm glad it gave so much pleasure to so many viewers back at home as well.
Well, Tony, thanks so much for that. Really good to hear about the AirPods.
Yeah.
And it was, I've just got it up, 7.1 million people saw that on TikTok alone. So there we go.
All right.
Tony Maguire, thanks indeed for joining us.
Right, let's cross live now to Paris. And we're told that world leaders are arriving for the coalition of the willing. This is live pictures now.
Now, we're seeing now Emmanuel Macron there, Nana and Tom welcoming that world. I think we're now seeing the elected leaders arriving. That's why Emmanuel Macron is coming onto the steps of the Elysee Palace to welcome them. I think that's Chancellor Merz. I can't quite see from where I'm standing. But there we have. We see Emmanuel Macron now lining up on the stairs to welcome the world leaders. We're expecting Sir Keir Starmer within a few minutes' time. The tension here, there is tension here in the Elysee Palace. I think what's happened with the seizing of the leader of Venezuela is there's renewed pressure on these European leaders to step up and find an offer to Vladimir Putin of Russia. And embrace there, that is Donald Tusk. He, of course, is the I think the Polish Prime Minister. He certainly had a role also, didn't he, in the European Union a few years ago. But he's arriving here again. We are expecting around nearly 30 world leaders here. Not all of them, of course, are leaders of countries. Others are leaders of institutions like the European Union and the like. But we're now getting into the meat and drink of the arrivals of these world leaders. These cars are not flagged, so I'm not seeing who they are before they get out, but as soon as they do get out, I'm identifying them for you as best I can. We're seeing there Emmanuel Macron come down to welcome, that could be, is that the, maybe, I can't see from where I'm standing who that is, but there we have it. The vehicles are queuing up to arrive now. There's Emmanuel Macron there shaking hands and waving from the steps of the Elysee. He, of course, has had lunch already with Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine. This is a very, very important meeting of these world leaders. They can't fully trust, I don't think, America as they felt they could do before the weekend's events in Venezuela. And certainly the language about Greenland, of course, a protectorate of Denmark, is highly alarming. You see him come down the steps there. That's Emmanuel Macron. We're expecting a lot of world leaders here today. For those listening on the radio, we're looking at them arriving now. They've been greeted by Emmanuel Macron on the steps of a snowbound Elysee Palace here in the heart of Paris. We're going to see 27 heads of state arriving. Keir Starmer, of course, Friedrich Merz of Germany, Italy's Giorgia Meloni, and Canada's Mark Carney. Also NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, he's coming. For the US, the Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of the US President Donald Trump. They are representing Washington.
Oh no, I don't think so.
That could be the Finnish Prime Minister. I can't see. That's certainly not Giorgia Meloni yet. So this meeting is due to start at 2:10 UK time, but they are running late. And later we'll be hearing from the full world leaders at 5:45 for a press conference, and that'll be Germany's Friedrich Merz, Emmanuel Macron of France, Zelensky of Ukraine, and of course Keir Starmer of the UK. That'll be live on GBNews. That could slip. So you're seeing now Emmanuel Macron welcoming them as he climbs the stairs, turns for the cameras, shakes hands, and welcomes them in. There's a steady procession now of cars with diplomatic plates queuing up in a snowbound Elysee Palace courtyard. Again, another world leader arrives. Emmanuel Macron comes down the stairs to greet them.
That's Stubb, isn't it?
And that looks like Mark Rutte, who's the NATO Secretary General. climbing the stairs now. So there's a long procession of cars here, Tom and Nana, queuing up through this courtyard.
I think that might actually be Ulf Kristersson. Mark Rutte's quite a bit taller than that.
Thank you, Tom.
So that's the
yes, I'm about 100
Swedish
yards
Prime
away
Minister.
from here. So.
Yeah. There is a huge number of members of the coalition of the willing, not just European, but also Canada's included, Japan, Australia. I mean, these are it's a coalition of countries that are. What are they willing to do, Chopper?
Whatever they can, I think.
Well, what they're willing to do is they're trying to organise their defence budgets not to be reliant on America for the first time since the end of the Cold War. There's been that long peace dividend,
sorry to interrupt,
which allowed,
but I think
of course,
we're looking at
countries here.
Who is the current Prime Minister of the Netherlands. I believe that is Dick Schoof shaking hands there with Emmanuel Macron, who, of course, is the outgoing Prime Minister of the Netherlands after their recent election. But the current Prime Minister, Dick Schoof, there.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, what they're doing here is just trying to find some way of reorganising their defence budgets and them militarily, but not using the European Union as any kind of vehicle for this, or NATO. It's outside of both NATO and the European Union. That's why it's called this strange name, the Coalition of the Willing. But what they're trying to do is make sure they do step up and look after the security of the boundaries of Europe after what's happened in Ukraine. Big question, I think, from all this will Putin allow any troops from any NATO countries, even if they're not NATO badged, even if they're Coalition of the Willing badged, to be in Ukraine? We think he won't allow that to happen, and that could be this deal breaker, but we haven't got to that point of presenting Putin with an offer.
and yet we're expecting the Americans to be... Oh, sorry. Is that the Bulgarian Prime Minister?
Again, I can't quite...
I think it might be Rosen Zeleyakov, just from... I think that is the Bulgarian Prime Minister.
From my position in the courtyard, none of the cars now have any flags on as they arrive, which makes it hard to identify from 100 yards away, which is why it's harder.
Yes, absolutely. Are the Americans represented here today?
Yes, they are here. There's two individuals representing Donald Trump. Steve Witkoff, of course, the envoy was well known to us, the Ukrainian envoy, and also Jared Kushner, who is President Trump's son-in-law. They are both due here, but they are not here yet. They may probably be, I imagine, be the last arrivals. That is Mark Rutte arriving now, Tom. That is the NATO Secretary General, who I misidentified earlier. That is Mark Rutte arriving now, climbing the stairs and to shake hands and sing to and a conversation there. And behind him, approaching the steps as they go to the steps now, is the Prime Minister of Norway approaching Tom and Nana. So you're seeing there a wave, more of a chat between the NATO Secretary General and Emmanuel Macron. Of course, NATO has no formal role in what they're agreeing here, but NATO is important in any conversation about the future of Greenland, and we're seeing that could put the NATO alliance under threat, and that's what Mark Rutte will be saying inside there. This is the Norway Prime Minister arriving now. There we have it, shaking hands and an embrace there from Emmanuel Macron. And a hand on the back. Again, some more warm words there as they climb the stairs back into the Élysée Palace here in Paris. I should say it's absolutely freezing cold here. We're standing on snow, hard compacted snow. There's an enormous, about 40-foot Christmas tree to the right of this front door, covered in snow. It's the most unbelievable festive scene. The next arrival will be the Prime Minister of Belgium, Tom and Nana. They're queuing now to approach the steps. I can see them right in front of me. A snowball's throw from where I'm standing. They've been guided in by some staff here for Emmanuel Macron. And the Belgian PM now is about to alight from the car, be greeted there by Emmanuel Macron. A salute from the guard here in the Élysée Palace. They climb the steps and they'll turn for the cameras about now.
Yes, that looks like Bart de
These are
Viva,
countries which
the
have
Prime Minister
relied
of-
really on the overarching. They've relied of the overarching protection, I think, of America for so long, but now being forced to stand up on the world stage themselves. I think this could be the North. Get jumping. And here we have to go down the stairs. Emmanuel Macron greeting the. This is the Finnish Prime Minister, we believe, greeting Emmanuel Macron on the steps. And then one of the big players about to arrive next, Tom and Nana, this should be Friedrich Merz, who's the German chancellor, an absolute key broker in what might be agreed today in Paris. So there you have on screen now.
Alexander
Finnish Prime
Stubb there,
Minister
the
going in.
president of Finland.
Thank
there
you,
are
Tom.
such a large number of individual leaders, and perhaps this comes to the fragility of Europe, that to make a strategic decision, of course there are 50 states of the United States, but one president, but there is no sort of authority for someone like Ursula von der Leyen to make the decisions on behalf of these huge number of heads of government and heads of state.
That's a... yeah, absolutely right, Tom. That's Friedrich Merz embracing their backslats for Emmanuel Macron from Friedrich Merz. He, of course, is a German chancellor. They are changing their whole stance on defence. But you're absolutely right, there wasn't a formal list from the UK government on who was coming today, so we had to simply come along and report live from the courtyard here, and that's why we're slightly unclear on who some of them are. The car pulling up now is the Premier of Latvia. Latvia arriving now. Again, down comes Emmanuel Macron, an embrace. That should be the Premier of Latvia there, I understand. Yep. Now you're about to, and they turn around, they shake hands. But it does show the sort of chaotic nature of this, and I wonder for how long this coalition that will can exist as an informal gathering of countries, because there will be pressure to formalise it into some form of armed force, and that'll be a rival to NATO or to the EU. We're now seeing, I'm expecting Edi Rama to get out of this car. He's the PM of Albania, and he is enormous. He's one of the tallest world leaders out there. He might tower over Emmanuel Macron. There we have it, look at that. A giant of a man. Very good English and very witty. I was able to go to a meeting of the European Political Community when he chaired it. He's very, very funny and speaks very good English, and he got on well with Keir Starmer. He famously, of course, told Keir Starmer, who wanted some form of maybe an offshoring agreement for migrants in Albania, that he loves the UK, but he's married to Italy because they've got a deal with Italy, and everyone's he had this much more of a connection between Italy and Albania than the UK and Albania.
Really interesting, though, that there
this
could
is
be
the
this...
PM. This is the cars of the PM of Lithuania arriving now, Tom and Nana. The Lithuanian PM about to emerge from that car.
Do you think, Chopper, that this could actually culminate in some sort of more formal military alliance between these countries with a more formal leadership structure than just this absolutely gargantuan number of different individuals whom no one on the planet could name all of these people? And goodness me, I think we struggle having meetings with more than about 6 people in a room. I mean, there are dozens of people sitting around a table trying to agree something.
Well,
I mean, it's never going to work,
that
is
was
it?
the problem with the EU, wasn't it? That's the problem why we left.
I think that's so right. I do think this coalition they're willing for now is this rather chaotic group of people concerned about Russia expansion into Europe. But this can't last. If it will start to challenge NATO, will start to challenge the European Union on security grounds, and I think. And that's where I think we are. That's where I think it's going. But we are seeing what's forming. Same way we did after the Second World War, like-minded countries. I think that's Alberto Costa from the back, who's the head of the European Council. That's one of the 2 big Brussels-based bodies. Which he, of course, he's a Portuguese politician, but he knows Emmanuel Macron very well. We are expecting Sir Keir Starmer to arrive imminently, so do please, if you can, stay with us. Appreciate we're seeing lots of images here of world leaders arriving.
No, of course, Chopper. While we wait, though, I did want to ask you this question, whether or not Donald Trump is being perhaps counterproductive in his approach to Europe. Of course, he doesn't like the European Union as an organisation, but perhaps America's cold shoulder towards these countries is actually making the European Union go closer together, is forcing a deeper sense of integration than would otherwise be the case.
Who's that? Slovenia. And yes, you could well be right. There's Emmanuel Macron greeting the PM of Slovenia there, Tom and Nana. Yes, I mean, I think he's showing he's a man in a hurry. He's planning that Venezuela mission, we understand, for months from America, and that's why he's been so keen to move on from the Ukraine conflict and try and move forward with this. And he can't understand, in his language, why this war was allowed to break out under Joe Biden's administration. Another vehicle arriving now with this is the PM of Estonia arriving now, Tom and Nana. Again, down comes Emmanuel Macron, and here comes Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer, sir, can you get peace in Ukraine?
What about Greenland, Keir Starmer?
Sir Keir Starmer, can you protect Greenland? What if America invades Greenland, Sir Keir Starmer? Sir Keir Starmer, can you get peace in Ukraine? What the future of NATO, Sir Keir Starmer? President Macron, can you get peace? Sir Keir Starmer there greeting Emmanuel Macron, the only leader here to walk up through the snowbound courtyard of the Elysee Palace, meeting there with Emmanuel Macron, a warm embrace. And he's chosen to do it his own way, Sir Keir Starmer. I mean, in diplomatic terms, that's extraordinary. That was not expected. They turn, they face the cameras. Can you get peace in Ukraine, Sir Keir Starmer? Of course, not answering questions of GBNews, and why should he, but I'm having a go. In he goes. The next leader to appear, Tom and Nana, is the Prime Minister of Spain.
Chopper, I've just got to ask you, was there no car at all? Did the Prime Minister not get out of a car, or did he get out of a car further away? Why the long walk up?
Tom, there was no car at all. There was no car at all. He did not. He must have walked through the archway, which is about 50 yards to my left,
and just
walked on his own.
It is very, very close by. I mean, I was in the Elysee Palace a couple of years ago, and the British Embassy is a very short walk from the palace itself. So perhaps he walked.
You're looking now at the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez meeting now with Emmanuel Macron. Yes, of course, you're correct to say that he may have well come straight from the British Embassy, although he's come a long way to get here from London after that cabinet meeting. So it's not really clear why he walked. It certainly made quite a show because he's chosen to walk straight down the middle, then basically 10 feet from where I'm standing. We were able to try and ask him a question or two, which you couldn't do to other world leaders. They're too far away. Now you look at Ursula von der Leyen. Now she's one of the key power brokers in this. She's the president of the European Union. She, along with Merz of Germany, Macron himself, the UK, Sir Keir Starmer, Mark Rutte of NATO, Alberto Costa of the European Council, those are the players who will decide so much. Many of these are bit part players arriving for this summit, but you are now seeing the big league players arrive. These guys, the pressure on these people, it was not expected when Donald Trump was sworn in as president, not even a year ago, but now it really is because of the way he's behaving on the world stage. It's up to these leaders, these elected leaders, many of them, not all of them, but many of them elected. They've got to step up now and frankly start paying for their own defence in a way they haven't been for 3 decades or more.
All right, Christopher, we'll come back to you, but joining us now is GBNews' national reporter, Charlie Peters. So the coalition of the willing, every time I look, the numbers of how many member states there are seem to change. At one time it was 28, now it's 35. What are they likely to be talking about? Obviously, hot on the agenda, Ukraine, but, you know, what do you think they'll be saying?
And the most pressing issue is actually going to be the issue with Greenland and the strength of NATO. Will the alliance sort of be able to stand up with these continued internal debates and indeed what some in the European world are seeing as threats. And we have had a statement actually from the Prime Minister of Greenland, Jens Frederik Nielsen, who said, in a situation where the American president has said that the United States is very serious about Greenland, the support of that wider statement from European leaders is very important and unambiguous. He says he's seeking respectful dialogue, which for many commentators are saying just isn't coming out of the United States. At the moment, we've seen Stephen Miller, senior aide to Donald Trump, talking about the importance of Greenland to the US and saying that no one is going to stop the US militarily. And I think that's probably true. Who on earth would take that risk going up against the biggest military in the world? And there certainly isn't an interest in NATO or Europe to do that. But bizarre fighting talk for that. And we'll go back to Christopher Hope in Paris.
Come now.
Oh, I think Denmark are arriving now. Christopher.
I'm looking now to the PM of Denmark arriving now. Pulling in. This is absolutely the key person. I've already put out a statement saying that the world leaders have agreed the importance of sovereignty. Now watch this embrace now from Emmanuel Macron. It should be hearty and prolonged. Kiss on the cheeks, of course. Maximum pressure on there, the leader of the Prime Minister of Denmark, in a grey suit, a sombre suit to mark the occasion here. There's a Ukraine is playing out, the Ukraine issue there, the war, nearly 3 or 4 years now of fighting there. But Denmark there with the pressure on this attempt to try and take, well, at least verbally, if not from Donald Trump, and how that plays out in the next few weeks means so much for those world leaders there. Emmanuel Macron going in there with the Prime Minister of Denmark, almost to stress, I think, how important that meeting is going to be.
It must almost feel like America is sort of the
next guest arrive, and the next guest arrive now, Tom and Nana, is Mark Carney. That we expect the Prime Minister of Canada. A slight pause now. It looks like Emmanuel Macron spent more time there with the Danish PM than other leaders, not surprisingly. Now we're expecting the representative from Canada to get out of this vehicle, and I'm expecting it to be Mark Carney. So just stay on this if you don't mind.
I was just saying that it must feel a bit like America is sort of the traitor. They're there, they're obviously part of it, but they're not really, Charlie.
Yes, still with you in the studio here. I actually have an update to bring you. I think it's going to be highly relevant to this meeting now. We've been speaking about this oil tanker that's being tracked in the North Atlantic, as we see Mark Carney there being greeted by Emmanuel Macron. Well, we've seen French, we've seen American and even Irish maritime surveillance looking over the position of this oil tanker fleeing from the United States. Well, it looks like the Royal Air Force are now involved as well. We've just been seeing on flight radar, open source data, a rivet joint, one of the RAF's treasured spy planes, departing out of RAF Waddington in Lincolnshire, heading in the direction of that tanker's last known location, northwest of Ireland. So a lot of pressure building on that potential operation. And it's remarkable, Nana and Tom, as we are watching these European and world leaders gather to discuss Greenland, to discuss Ukraine, they could be working with the United States in the background on a fresh military operation to take place just off the coast of the United Kingdom.
That is really, really fascinating, because that would mean that, well, not just complicit, but actively involved would our Prime Minister Keir Starmer be. Could we hold on to that for just 1 second? Looking at the order at which people walked into the Elysee Palace there, isn't it notable that the last two countries, Denmark and Canada, Arctic Circle countries, and the position of the last four, if I'm not mistaken, were the European Commission President, well, our Prime Minister, the European Commission President, the Prime Minister of Denmark and the Prime Minister of Canada. I mean, if we're talking about an order of significance, of prescience, that is a highly symbolic final four people to walk in, shake the hand of Emmanuel Macron ahead of this meeting.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially as the statement they put out, those world leaders, European and indeed the Canadians involved as well, was talking about the Arctic region and international security really at the top of that statement. So I think, Tom, you're not just adding significance after the event. I think it's clearly there to add to the focus on this. But that's the problem they've got, isn't it, really, Tom? It's just gestures, gesture politics at a time when America is talking about hard power, talking about the capabilities it's got to actually get things done. And as Stephen Miller says, no one's going to fight the might of the United States. Little gestures like this, these statements, I mean, sure, there's reassurance there, there's solidarity, but you know what really counts for solidarity for Greenland and indeed for Ukraine and any other European projections of power? Hard power, not just statements and orders of march, and who arrives, who gets a longer hug with Emmanuel Macron. None of that actually translates into military capability or hard power on the global stage.
I don't think they're that organised. I don't think they're as organised as that. I mean, what is the significance of Keir Starmer walking there?
Yeah.
Do you think perhaps he was inside the building, then thought you better do an entrance, then walked around the side, and then
Well, frankly, the significance of it is there's none, right? It doesn't actually mean anything in terms of raw capability. It doesn't change anything on that perspective.
Well, I think he wanted to make an entrance. The British Embassy is literally opposite the Elysee Palace. He could have just walked there. He would have probably said, why do I need to drive this what would be a 60-second drive? I wonder, though, have we just seen a roll call of individuals walking one by one, shaking the hands of the French president there, a roll call of the final individuals, the last people standing in this world who believe in international law? Have we just seen those 35 or so countries being the only countries in the world, out of the 200-odd that exist, the only ones who actually believe in what international law is?
Yeah, well, it's certainly a dwindling power, isn't it, that group? At least they're the countries that talk the most about international law, and not in an ironic sense, like when Russia or China talk about international law and then quite promptly go and breach it. I mean, we've been hearing this term for the last 3 days. What does it actually mean, and what does it actually provide for states like the United Kingdom? Fundamentally, in the new world order that we're in, might is right. If the United States wants to pinch Maduro, it can. And the problem with Russia invading Ukraine isn't that it's a breach of international law, it's that it's just the wrong thing to do, right? It's an invasion of a sovereign state. It's not because Russia didn't acquire the right permit to do so, didn't follow the right letter of the law.
What would be a legal invasion of Ukraine? I always find this bizarre when we say an illegal invasion of Ukraine or an illegal invasion of Iraq. I mean, what would be a legal one? What? I mean, come on.
Yeah, precisely. And I think that's some of the things that European and world leaders are starting to have to reckon with today. It was difficult enough for them to reckon with it when it was happening in Venezuela. It becomes additionally stressful for world leaders like the United States start talking about it, about a NATO ally in one of the 3 kingdoms of Denmark, in Greenland. And one of the commentators on GBNews.com/your said, oh, Denmark's not really an Arctic country. Well, it sort of is when you are looking at the presence of Greenland, and there are already lots of American forces there, but clearly it is central to Denmark's sovereignty as well.
Well, I think it'll be interesting, because I'm not sure what sort of intervention the Coalition of the Willing could make if America do decide to try and take Greenland. But joining us now is our political editor, Christopher Hope in Paris, and Catherine Forster from Downing Street. So let's get to Christopher Hope first. So, Christopher, we've seen a lot of the world leaders coming in now. Is that it? Was there some sort of significant ordering of who went in what order? Because we're discussing that now. Was there any significance in there?
It didn't seem to be. I think you had the officials arriving first, and they were not greeted by Emmanuel Macron. Then as the elected leaders arrived, then we saw Emmanuel Macron come down from the steps. The doors of Elysee Palace behind me were flung open, and they welcomed them. Of course, we saw the hearty embrace for the Premier of Denmark because of the pressure on Greenland, and that, of course, is a royal kingdom of Denmark. That's the concern there. But the big power players are now behind me in the Elysee Palace of the so-called Coalition of the Willing. The summit has started. We'll see. Maybe they might break around 5:10 UK time, with a press conference expected for 5:45 p.m. But that time is elastic. You don't normally get 27 world leaders in the same place if they can't get a deal. They want to take this forward from 90% agreed on this terms of an agreed offer to Russia to 100% agreed. We haven't yet seen Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, or Steve Witkoff, who is the peace envoy for Donald Trump. They have not yet arrived publicly.
See if I could do this without
But it did mark Sir Keir Starmer out as being a different way to arrive and a much more of an informal arrival, but a very big embrace there from Emmanuel Macron.
Well, Christopher Hope, thanks very much indeed from the heart of the French government. Let's turn now to the heart of the British government. Catherine Forster is in Downing Street for us because, Catherine, Britain has quite a few things to say on Greenland, even if we didn't have so much to say on Venezuela.
Yes, indeed. And on the coalition of the willing, the Prime Minister has played a key part in this. I was actually at the very first meeting at the Elysee Palace, which was in February of last year, and it was scrambled incredibly hastily after the Munich Security Conference, at which J.D. Vance stood up and said about migration, about free speech, not the message that Europe was hoping to hear. And that came just a day or so after Europe had been totally blindsided when Donald Trump had picked up the phone to Putin with no warning, and they had talked for 90 minutes. So the whole world order seemed to shift at that point. And these coalition of the willing meetings, this is much more organised. The first one that I was at was so hasty. I was just out in the street. But the Prime Minister, I can tell you then, also walked along the street. I think from the embassy, I think that's the reason why he's walked in today. But he's come from Downing Street, from Cabinet this morning. He'll be back later tonight. But of course, as well as Ukraine and the critical importance of getting support in place for if and when we eventually get that ceasefire, there is now massive concern about Greenland and Donald Trump's intentions towards it. We had those very worrying words overnight from Steve Miller, the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Home Security, saying nobody's going to fight the US militarily over the future of Greenland because they couldn't win. It would be one NATO ally potentially attacking another. And Europe, of course, sending out a statement saying Greenland's future is a matter for Greenland and for Denmark only, taking a united front. But the thing is that Donald Trump decided to remove the leader of Venezuela because he could. And as Steve Miller said, the world is governed by strength, might and power. Now, we put that to the Prime Minister's spokesman in the lobby briefing, and he said there have always been moments to question whether the rules-based international order is working as intended. Of course, the Prime Minister will not directly criticise Donald Trump or anything that America does, although he was clear yesterday that Greenland is off limits. But what if America decides they're going to take it anyway? I thought it was interesting what Donald Tusk, the Polish PM, said. He was on Twitter and he said that Europe would have to stand united like never before, not something that European countries are terribly good at doing, making decisions in the EU very difficult. He said one for all and all for one, otherwise we are finished. So of course, the focus is on Ukraine today, but I think there will be huge concern behind the scenes. We know that Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, will be there. Also, Steve Witkoff from America. The Prime Minister, we understand, is hoping to speak to Donald Trump at some point, perhaps to give him an update. But at the end of the day, Europe has not paid its way in terms of NATO spending. We've pledged to get to, I think, 2.6 by 2027. But what Donald Trump is dictating, 5%, is a very, very long way off. And now we have a position that potentially we don't just have to defend ourselves from Russia, but potentially from other threats that from areas that we thought were allies.
All right, Catherine Forster, thank you very much. Coalition of the willing. I mean, what are they good at? They're good at talking. They're good at talking. That's about all. But Sir Keir Starmer has suffered a new blow in his bid to hand over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. The Prime Minister defied by peers over the agreement that will see the archipelago transferred to Mauritius in a deal experts warn could cost taxpayers $35 billion.
Well, as part of the agreement, Britain would rent back Diego Garcia, which is the island that is home to a British and American military base, as part of that Chagos archipelago.
Well, joining us now is former First Minister of Northern Ireland, Dame Arlene Foster. Arlene, thank you very much for joining us. So this is a bit of a merry-go-round with this, because even though there's been stallings, it is likely that it will still go ahead. What are your thoughts on the situation with the Chagos Islands?
Well, it's good to be with you both and to have a conversation about the Chagos Islands in the context of self-determination, because we're talking a lot about the self-determination of Greenland at the moment and the fact that they want to remain with Denmark. But of course, the Chagosian people have never been asked as to what they want to do with their homeland. Instead, it's been handed away to Mauritius, and then we're renting back an inordinate amount of money to be able to have our security base there with the Americans. And what we were trying to do yesterday in the House of Lords was to say that we need to speak with the Chagosian people and give them their voice, because of course these people were removed forcibly from the Chagos Islands in the late 1960s by a then Labour government. They were dispersed across the world to the Maldives, to the Seychelles, and here in the United Kingdom. And they have never been asked in relation to the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands. It then became the British Indian Ocean Territory, one of our overseas territories. And what we're doing now, or rather what the government wants to do now, is to hand away the sovereignty of that territory to Mauritius. I believe that's wrong, particularly when we haven't asked the Chagosian people what they want to see happening.
I was going to say it's ironic. Sorry, it's ironic, though, that Sir Keir Starmer should be championing the sovereignty of the Danish people, but he doesn't seem to be so bothered about the Chagosians when he's giving away the islands.
That's precisely the point, Nana. If we're going to take positions on international matters, then the very least we should be is consistent. And we're not being consistent. Of course, when we put that point to the government, they say, oh, well, it doesn't apply in this instance because there isn't a permanent population on the Chagos Islands. Well, the reason why there's not a permanent population on the Chagos Islands is because we forcibly removed them. And I think it's absolutely scandalous that we're not allowing people to have their voice. And that's why we last night had a number of amendments that were agreed in the House of Lords, and so it will now go back to the House of Commons, and I hope that the House of Commons wakes up and realises what this government is doing.
I mean, using the logic of this government, if Donald Trump sweeps into Greenland, removes the population so there's no longer a permanent population there, well then there's no self-determination to be had. He can take the island. I mean, it's bonkers logic. But Arlene, your amendment, one of your amendments last night was, of course, to have a referendum of the Chagosians. That fell by less than 10 votes. But there were some amendments that passed, and it now seems that the government has delayed what was going to be a vote tomorrow to ratify the treaty, and it's going to be delayed right through until the 12th of this month. Is the government worried that they might actually face a setback in the Commons as well as the Lords?
Well, I'm very pleased that they have delayed the third reading of this bill in the House of Lords, because there's another element to this as well, Tom. There's actually a court case going on in the High Court. There's a judicial review, and the determination of that judicial review has been delayed for a number of months. We're told now that we're going to have that determination on the 12th of January. So I don't think it's any mistake that government have now decided to have the third reading on the 12th of January. We in the Lords were very concerned that we were going to have the third reading before the High Court had given us judgment. So I'm now hopeful that we will have that judgment from the High Court. But I would just urge the government to pause this entire treaty, because there needs to be a meaningful engagement with the Chagosian people. We cannot say and lecture other governments on self-determination when we aren't allowing self-determination for people who we displaced in the late 1960s. I think it's a scandal. I think it's something that needs to be exposed, and I hope that through the amendments that we've put down in the House of Lords, we've been able to highlight what has been happening in the government's name to these people.
And also, very briefly, the peers voted in favour of renegotiating a key term of the Chagos deal. So if the island is unusable as a military base, then we should have to stop paying rent for it. I mean, it just seems a very ill-thought-out proposition in the first place.
I really did support that amendment in the name of one of our former Chief of Defence Staff, Lord Craig, supported by another former Chief of Defence Staff. And essentially, it was a very sensible amendment to say, well, if it's unusable in the future, we shouldn't continue to pay money. But for some reason, the government wouldn't agree to that. I mean, I think it's a very sensible thing to say that if it's an unusable base, that we shouldn't continue to pay for it. However, there have been a number of amendments now passed with the House of Lords. I'm pleased about that. It will go back to the House of Commons, and I hope overall the government sees sense and pauses this treaty, because you and I both know there's a lot going on in the world at the moment, and I do not believe we should be handing away sovereignty of this very key asset in the Indian Ocean.
Yeah, absolutely, especially without even the permission of the people who live in it or who were initially living in it. Arlene Foster, thank you very much. That is a former First Minister of Northern Ireland, Dame Arlene Foster. Thank you.
Well, lots more still to come on today's programme. First questions over the decision to ban Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from a match in Britain.
Well, all that and much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, very good day to you. This is your latest GB News weather update coming to you from the Met Office. The cold and wintry weather continues as we go through this week, with some significant further snow for Scotland through today. Meanwhile, there is a front pushing its way southeastwards as we go through today, and that is bringing some outbreaks of rain, bit of sleet, bit of hill snow, initially across parts of Northern Ireland, but feeding into parts of England and Wales as well. It's mainly over Northern England where we're going to see much in the way of wintry weather, but plenty of snow feeding in across parts of Scotland. Some significant snow building up, the potential for 10 to 15 centimetres on top of what's already lying in some parts here. It is going to be another cold day, temperatures well below average for the time of year, particularly towards the east, ever so slightly less cold than recent days across some western parts. As we go into this evening, the snow continues across parts of Scotland, wrapping around that occlusion, continuing to bring in some heavy snow accumulations. Further south, it's more of a wintry mix across southern parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and into Northern England. Some sleet, some hill snow, that kind of thing. Further south even more, and across parts of England and Wales as that front pushes its way southeastwards. It is going to bring some wetter weather. There may be some wintriness mixed in with it. All of that then clears away towards the east-southeast as we go through the night, and behind it something a fair bit drier, also clearer. Not totally dry, there will be a few spots of rain, sleet and hill snow here and there, but most places turning largely dry. Those clear skies allowing for temperatures to drop. Perhaps not as cold as some recent nights, but nonetheless a fair bit of frost and ice to watch out for tomorrow morning yet again. All the time, further snow piles in across northern parts of Scotland, and so that's going to continue to bring some hazards here. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, for many, a lot of dry, sunny weather around, but still feeling cold, particularly towards the northeast where we have some strong gusty winds, and then cloud and rain pushing into some western parts later on. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the A92, the slip road from Crossgates Junction is restricted due to a broken down vehicle. On the M1 southbound between Junction 33 and Junction 32 near Rotherham, a stranded vehicle has one of 4 lanes closed. In Derbyshire, the A38 southbound between the M1 and the A61 at Alfreton is down to 1 lane for a tyre change. In Suffolk, the A14 westbound between Junction 49 at Stowmarket West and Junction 47 at Elmswell, a vehicle fire is closing one of 2 lanes. And on the trains, the Elizabeth line has major disruption, and Great Western Railway is using road transport on routes. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 37 minutes past 2. Now, MPs are set to challenge West Midlands Police after Aston Villa barred Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from entering the stadium.
The match sparked mass protests ahead of the match, and the force has been under increased pressure to explain why officers decided to do so.
Well, joining us from Aston Villa is GB News national reporter Jack Carson. Jack, what's the lay of the land in Birmingham?
Well, the Home Affairs Select Committee have just started scrutinising members of West Midlands Police down in Westminster. Here, of course, this was the scene of that Aston Villa Europa League match against Maccabi Tel Aviv back in November, but the controversy around this game started in the weeks before, when the Safety Advisory Group, they are the group which ultimately decides whether a game can go ahead, the safety precautions that might need to take place, when they decided that Maccabi Tel Aviv fans would not be allowed to attend this fixture. Now, in leaks in the newspapers in the past few days from minutes taken at the meetings of the Safety Advisory Group, they said that the police based their initial support for a ban on the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans on what was described as one officer's professional judgment and in the absence of intelligence. It was then when a staff member at Birmingham City Council asked the police to obtain information because it could preempt criticism of claims of anti-Jewish sentiment. Then the West Midlands Police seemed to focus then on what had happened in Amsterdam back in 2024 when Ajax had faced Maccabi Tel Aviv fans. They said they gained intelligence from the Dutch police and therefore it was unsafe for those Maccabi Tel Aviv fans to come to Birmingham, and in some of the tables linking the risk factor that West Midlands Police were basing their decision off, the previous rating of high for overall risk level remained high, but things like risk to pro-Palestinian protesters rose from medium to high, as well as the risk to away supporters being downgraded from high to medium, they say, pending review. So they are facing questions from that Home Affairs Committee right now. It's just begun, initially with the police being asked exactly why no minutes were taken in their meeting with those Dutch police colleagues. Mike Wilkinson, who runs the footballing policing unit of West Midlands Police, answering those first initial questions. He's saying that it's not common practice for him to take minutes during those meetings with police-to-police peers. These are meetings that he had with Dutch police, gaining that evidence that they then used in their justification for why they wanted to ban fans. But he did say he provided notes into the chain of command as soon as he could immediately after that meeting, and then they were obviously then used as part of that evidential base. The West Midlands Police said that a huge amount of planning went into this operation with the aim, they say, of preventing crime and disorder and disruption to the game. They say the operation achieved its aims of keeping everyone in attendance safe. But we saw, of course, here the huge police presence that it took with those pro-Palestine protests taking place anyway, despite there being no away fans, and the scrutiny of those police officers from the Home Affairs Select Committee continues in Parliament right now.
All right, Jack Carson, thank you very much. Well, joining us now is the former Attorney General, Sir Michael Ellis. Now, Michael, this is rather extraordinary, isn't it? First of all, they took some information that wasn't really very good.
Yes.
And then they decided to take information, ask mosques who had anti-Semitic preachers there as to whether it was wise to host Maccabi Tel Aviv. Why did they do that?
Well, that's a very good question, Nana. Look, the West Midlands Police are in real trouble here. I think the Chief Constable's job is on the line. I think he will probably have to go. The Prime Minister himself said that he felt the decision had anti-Semitic overtones when it was made in the latter part of last year. Kemi Badenoch said she thought it was a national disgrace. There was universal criticism. And then since then, we now see an unprecedented recall of a Chief Constable. Hasn't happened for probably 25 years that we can find, where because they gave evidence a month ago that is now being alleged was misleading, they've been summoned back. The Chief Constable's now back in front of Parliament. So there are allegations here, really serious allegations of misleading Parliament. For one thing, they said there was intelligence, the sort of intelligence that police rely on to make decisions about banning things. And there are allegations in the newspapers that those were made up only after the fact. So it was also said that there were reasons why the Tel Aviv Maccabi fans were banned coming from Dutch authorities following a disturbance in November of 2024 at a football match there. It turns out that the Dutch authorities are saying, no, that's not what we said at all. And in fact, they have backed that up with a further letter today. Nick Timothy MP has been doing some excellent work on this, as has, I have to say, the Sunday Times newspaper, Gabriel Pogrund, and other journalists, The Telegraph. They've been doing excellent excellent work on this because it's quite complicated, but the long and the short of it is that's why we're seeing the Chief Constable back in front of Parliament now in an unprecedented recall. These are really serious allegations, and Parliament wants to get to the bottom of it.
Ultimately, boiling this down to what the police were trying to achieve, sort of peace on the streets, I wonder if they were punishing the wrong half, if you see what I mean. The idea that perhaps some of the local Islamic community would be very upset if Tel Aviv fans were there.
Yes.
Well, then why is it the Tel Aviv fans who are told to stay away or at home, as opposed to the ones that might kick off?
Tom, you've hit the nail on the head there. And in fact, just in the last hour or two, the UK Football Policing Unit, in a report that's just been published in the Times newspaper, whereas the police last time said in front of Parliament that they had a clean bill of health from that unit, the Times is reporting that it was locals that wanted to arm themselves, and it was the allegations of threats of violence against the visiting Tel Aviv fans. So, look, there's a whole series of allegations here that are really serious. The whole point of getting in front of Parliament and having to answer these questions is to get to the truth and to get what actually happened. But we're in an unprecedented situation here, really serious for West Midlands Police. They're in serious trouble.
And should they be found to have breached any sort of rules, what will happen?
Well, ultimately, it's up to the Home Secretary, of course, because I believe that she has ordered the Chief Inspector of Constabulary to do his own report into what's gone on here. It may be that there are some innocent explanations, but at the moment, you know, there are real concerns that things have gone very badly wrong here.
Is it fair to say, however, that Maccabi Tel Aviv have a reputation around the world, that they are not the most shrinking violets when it comes to celebrating or indeed commiserating how their particular football team plays? Is it not fair to point to some of the historic instances of disruption and violence when this particular team has played in various cities around the world and have that feed into decision making?
Of course it's relevant, but so long as everyone is treated equally and fairly. And actually, Maccabi, my understanding is, and I'm not a football fan, but my understanding is...
Shocked me.
My understanding is that the match that was the big issue from November of 2024 that was used to cite this about the Maccabi fans, the Dutch authorities are saying no, that's not what actually is the case. Not that everyone's behaviour was immaculate, but it was within the range of behaviour that you would see from your average football club. So I think, you know, no one's suggesting that there are immaculate choir boy type behaviour all around here, but we've got to have all of our communities, all of them, have got to have faith and confidence in the police.
Well, Sir Michael Ellis, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's listen in to what the Constable has to say here before the Parliamentary Committee.
Are you aware of this email of the 9th of October?
I am.
When did you see it?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Probably in November, December.
Okay. And Chief Constable Guildford?
Only when we've been reviewing this.
Sorry?
Only when we've been in the
So
review.
an email comes in to senior officers in West Midlands Police saying we need a clearer rationale after supposedly we think it's been discussed and clearly you've talked about this pivotal moment, and no one says, well, hold on, we had a SAG 2 days ago where we discussed it. Did no one say that? Did no one return to that point?
Well, I think what I need to be clear on is that whenever anything came in from the SAG, the gold commander that was in charge at the time responded to the request that came in. My sense of it, because I wasn't at the SAG, is very much along the lines of discussions took place, information was shared, but I think the SAG chair then requested that something of a written document... just bear with me a sec. A written document was required to set everything out. I think that's what was required. But when it comes to...
not ask for a document, ask for a clearer rationale, i.e. there was no rationale at that point.
I don't think that was the case. I think the officers that went there participated in that process, and the SAG chair listened to what was said. It was discussed at the SAG, And following that, a couple of days later, I think that request came out, and then you can see in the chronology, we then sent, I think, more of a written document which set out some further detail. But please, you know, for the purposes of what we are trying to get to the bottom of, what you are trying to get to the bottom of, it would probably be important to ask the SAG around that, because I wasn't there and ACC O'Hara wasn't there.
Okay, thank you. Lord Mann's report, in the last session you told us that we did not have sight of it. Is that entirely accurate?
Yes, it never was sent to ourselves.
Never. Then why is it referenced in the community impact assessment? Bizarrely, something which is not about the community, despite what you told me a few minutes ago, but it's referenced in the community impact assessment. Why have you did not have sight of it?
Yeah, well.
So with the community meeting on the 20th of October, which took place in the evening, that was referenced by a community member, a Jewish community member, about Lord Mann's report. And the Community Bronze Chief Inspector Tim Robinson made a note of the feedback from the community and put it into the CIS.
It was circulated. It was circulated.
Yeah, that is what was said by the member of the community in the community meeting.
So the community impact assessment says it was circulated, and you're saying it doesn't mean it was circulated. What does it mean?
So I was present in the community meeting on the evening of the 20th of October, and a member of the community, in the community meeting that took place at police headquarters, referenced that Lord Mann's report had been circulated. That was noted by our Chief Inspector.
Why do you note doubts to the report's accuracy and whether it's a bit late? What's all that about? Why were there doubts about its accuracy at that point?
I don't know.
That's in there. It's recorded in this document, but you don't know why.
Oh, I imagine that would be the assessment of the Community Bronze Commander.
Turning to what happened in Amsterdam, do you stand by what you said to us last time about what happened in Amsterdam?
Yeah, the evidence that we gave last time.
You stand by all those things you said happened, even though it's contradicted by the Dutch police, by contemporaneous evidence, by media evidence. You still stand by all those things. I have a list of 11 things you told us which are disputed. Are you telling us you still stand by what was said?
I was really clear last time in what I said, and the Chief Inspector is sitting next to me who had the conversation. And I told you very clearly that I didn't doubt his integrity, and the information that we've provided in the 8 points in the letter, Chair, that you asked me to respond to since the first appearance, I've provided all that information to you. And I do stand by what was said. It was said on the basis of the information that was given to ourselves.
So Mattaby fans attack taxi drivers. Do you still hold that?
In specific reference to the taxi driver, yes, I do still hold that, and I've actually, in preparation for today, I've seen that in one of the first community impact assessments, and remember Lord Mann mentioned something about taxi drivers and said, well, actually it was the other way round. In his articulation, it was a taxi driver that was being attacked or allegedly attacked, or somebody dragged out of a taxi who was a Jewish member of the public. In the CST information that we've got that I've read as part of today, a taxi's mentioned twice. That incident is mentioned, but also there was an incident on the evening before which would imply that the taxi was attacked because it was, let's say, possibly a member of a different community. So this issue around the taxi, I think, and that was the information we got from the CST, one of the very first bits of information that they provided us with. So it mentioned 2 taxi incidents, one on the evening, the day before, and one on the day of the actual fixture.
Yeah, can you send that to us?
I think we have, you know, but yes, we've got that, yeah.
You still hold over 5,000 Dutch police deployed? You still hold to that, do you?
No, I remember when that was discussed at the beginning with the chair and with Lord Mann and ourselves. You know, the 5,000 was our assumption as to what were the inputs over those 3 or 4 days of the policing operation. Because I think the Dutch said more than 2,000 on just the day of the operation itself.
They said 1,200 were deployed. They said 1,200.
Sorry?
They said 1,200.
Sorry, I thought it was nearer to 2,000, but the 5,000 was a planning assumption from the Silver, which we discussed right at the beginning of when
made up, in fact,
the evidence
in
was. That's not right to say it was made up. No, that's not right. That's really not fair. It was a professional assumption of what would be required over the period of days, and I remember yourself and Mr. Mann having that conversation at the beginning of the evidence. Chair.
I think what we were saying that may be a way that you came up with a 5,000 number, but it isn't. It's a finger in the air, hoping to get to a calculation that might possibly work, rather than actually having any concrete
No, definitely not. No, it's
basis.
just a professional estimate as to how many officers.
You didn't check it with the Amsterdam police. You didn't go back and say, if we say 5,000, that's correct in terms of the.
No, we didn't. That was just the assumption that we've made based on.
So you don't know whether the 1,200 was 1,200 on one day or 1,200 over the full period?
No, I assumed from having spoken to the Silver Commander that the number itself was on the day of the actual event. And I think it was more towards the 2,000 than the 1,200. I know some of that those figures have been disputed, as you quite rightly say, but no, that was our assumption.
You still hold the line that no AI tools were used in the preparation?
Yeah, I've just got a note about that as well, because in your letter you asked as well around the some of the background of the information and the intelligence which we've provided, and there was a definite note that we've got to the bottom of in terms of the West Ham game. And I think the accusation, well, not the accusation, the summation, I think in the House, it was a question that was asked in the House, was that, you know, you've used AI, or West Midlands may have used AI on this particular occasion. We don't do that. We don't use the AI. The West Ham side of things and how we gain that information was one of the officers in producing the report. Usually they would go to, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Mark, they would go to a system which has sort of reports, intelligence reports that all the football officers use over the country of previous games. They didn't find any relevant information within the searches that they made for that, and then they basically Googled, you know, when was the last time, and that's how the information came to be.
So Google AI. The AI function on Google, is it?
I'm told, I'm being really candid here, I'm told that they just did a Google search on that because they couldn't find it in the normal system. And as it transpires, as I've said and made really clear, that information was wrong. And I've apologized.
We know that. We've gone through that. But why was your officer Googling?
But we haven't routinely used AI.
Why was your officer Googling to find information? If he looked in the usual place, there wasn't any. Why didn't he stop at that point? Why did he start Googling to try and find something?
Because when you do one of these assessments, I'm fairly convinced that when you produce it, you look at when an event has last taken place. You try and find the information as to when it last happened, and you go to the football system, and usually it tells you. But because these teams hadn't played for so very long, I don't think the information was in the system. Is that right?
There's still, we've double-checked, there is no information held in relation to Maccabi playing in this country on the national football system, which clearly they've played, but there was clearly no incidents that were recorded.
Well, isn't that your answer?
Yeah,
there were no incidents.
Well,
but rather than accepting that, you went to, we'll find it somewhere else.
Can I just come in? I want to get away from, I'm getting bogged down in detail. There's a few other points we need to make.
I just want to come in on the accuracy of your reporting, because in the SAG minutes of the 16th of October, there was discussion about the risk in reference to the different football fans. When talking about the Maccabi fan base, incidents in Italy, Norway and Holland were referenced, but none of these incidents involved Maccabi fans. For example, in Italy, it involved Beata Jerusalem. In Norway, it involved the Israeli national football team, and in Holland, it is the Israeli baseball team. And in fact, both of them was pro-Palestine protest rather than Israeli fan bad behaviour. So you're using evidence that did not actually relate to Maccabi Tel Aviv to highlight a risk to the community, which I don't think actually existed.
Can I also ask, you stated that Lord Mann had said that a Jewish person was dragged out of a taxi as part of his report. Can you point to exactly where that's said? Because we've been through the reports and we can't find that.
Can I assist on that, Chair?
Thank you.
So I've obviously seen Lord Mann's report. He references on the first page of the report at point 3, there was an altercation with a taxi driver that resulted in Israeli fans attacking a small number of taxis at the same location. The event dissipated quickly as the taxi drove off. So that is referenced.
It doesn't say a Jewish person was dragged out of a taxi.
No, I've just read exactly what he said.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
In terms of international systems, so as I say, bearing in mind those two fixtures were played some time ago, but if there's any instance of note, match reports are filed on the intelligence systems, they would have been available. In terms of any current intelligence, we would also check with other countries where you can imagine, to try and find out if they've relevant intelligence. So we brokered the contact between West Midlands Police and the Dutch National Police. Subsequent to that, we'd do the checks. Obviously, there was the incident with the Tel Aviv derby, which came out partway through this process.
Say that was after the decision was taken.
Yes, that was after the decision. And then there was a further incident.
Yes, and it wasn't the Maccabi fans, was it?
I'm sorry. I think the reports were that it was at the Maccabi, and forgive me, the other Tel Aviv clubs, the derby. And the report that was disorder there, and it was reported by the Israeli police as being serious disorder.
The game was called up, wasn't it? It was afterwards, yes.
That was after the decision, but while it was before the game.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Can I? I found the reference if you want.
Okay, please.
Do you want to go first, and then I'll.
Yeah.
Just the taxi
I asked
thing.
the question about why were you using different incidents of football involving violence where Israelis were involved as a way to highlight the threat that Maccabi Tel Aviv fans played into the community.
It feels to us, from everything we've seen, that there was a need that you felt that you had to justify banning these fans, and that scraping was done to find a reason.
Right. Well, that's absolutely not the case. I'm really sorry if it comes across in that way. That was absolutely not the case. The information, the intelligence that we received, that we documented, and we've shared absolutely all of that with HMIC FRS very, very recently, was all gone through. The mistake that was made in terms of the West Ham was one individual doing one Google search because he couldn't find the reference because it wasn't there within the system. But do you want to just answer that question?
I've just got a couple of points just to try and help a little bit if possible. So, open source research is not unusual in police information and